Hello guys, welcome to Dark Harry. So in this video, we will see what if Wednesday Addams met the Dementors of Azkaban and they ran away screaming. Darkest Timeline. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Dark recognizes Dark. This is getting tedious, Wednesday Addams muttered, adjusting the dial on her homemade dimensional displacer. The basement of the Addams family mansion hummed with electric potential, the air thick with ozone and possibility. Her experiment had been going for 3 hours now, with only minor success. She'd managed to send Pugsley's frog into what appeared to be a parallel dimension for approximately 47 seconds before it reappeared, slightly purple and croaking in reverse. Wednesday brushed a stray black braid from her face, eyes narrowed in concentration. Her pale features reflected the eerie green glow of the machine's central chamber. She needed more power. Something to tear a proper hole through the fabric of reality, not just poke at it tentatively. Perhaps Uncle Fester's lightning conductor would provide the necessary voltage, she mused, reaching for her notebook. Scribbled diagrams covered the pages, intricate mathematical formulas interspersed with anatomical sketches of various interdimensional creatures she hoped to encounter. Or dissect. Preferably both. A distant rumble of thunder provided the perfect backdrop to her musings. Storm brewing. Perfect timing. She pulled the conductor from its shelf, a twisted metal rod that Uncle Fester used during thunderstorms for his energizing sessions. Wednesday connected it to her machine, extending the rod through the small basement window and into the gathering storm. Just a little atmospheric electricity should, lightning struck with perfect dramatic timing. Blue-white energy surged down the conductor, into the machine, and directly through Wednesday Addams. Her slim body went rigid, black dress smoking slightly at the edges. The dimensional displacer glowed brighter and brighter until the entire basement was bathed in blinding light. Then darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Wednesday blinked, finding herself standing in cold, driving rain instead of her comfortable basement. Around her loomed dark trees, their branches swaying violently in the wind. This wasn't the Addams estate. This wasn't even New Jersey. Interesting, she said flatly, taking stock of her situation with clinical detachment. Her dimensional displacer was nowhere to be seen, which was problematic. Her experiment had succeeded beyond expectations. She traveled somewhere, but without her equipment, getting back presented a significant challenge. Lightning flashed again, illuminating her surroundings. In the distance stood a massive castle, its turrets and towers silhouetted against the storm-tossed sky. Medieval architecture, possibly European, definitely not modern America. Wednesday started walking toward it. If nothing else, castles often contain dungeons, torture chambers, and other homey amenities that might make her feel more comfortable while she sorted out her predicament. The forest path was muddy, but Wednesday moved with purpose, unbothered by the elements. The rain plastered her black dress to her slight frame, but she didn't hurry. Weather couldn't hurt an Addams. The air suddenly grew colder. Not the pleasant chill of a tomb or the refreshing coolness of a morgue, this was different. Unnatural. The rain around her began to freeze mid-fall, suspended momentarily before dropping as tiny ice pellets. Her breath clouded before her. Wednesday stopped, head tilting slightly. Something was approaching. Several somethings, gliding between the trees with unnatural silence. Black, hooded figures emerged from the darkness. They floated several inches above the ground, their tattered robes billowing around them despite the lack of wind. Faces, if they had them, remained hidden in the depths of their hoods. There were 5 of them, converging on her position from different directions, forming a loose circle. Most people would have felt fear. Wednesday Addams felt only mild curiosity. "Hello," she said, voice flat and emotionless. "I don't suppose any of you could direct me to the nearest interdimensional portal? Or failing that, a telephone?" The creatures paused, hovering uncertainly. One drifted closer, reaching out with gray, decayed hands. A rattling breath emanated from beneath its hood as it seemed to inhale deeply. Wednesday remained perfectly still, observing with scientific interest. Attempting to induce fear through environmental manipulation and predatory posturing. Fascinating. Are you local manifestations of death, or merely scavengers of human emotion? The creature recoiled slightly. It tried again, floating closer, its rattling breath becoming more pronounced. If you're trying to frighten me, you should know that fear is an emotion I find largely unnecessary, Wednesday informed it. Though your aesthetic is admirable. The decaying robes are a nice touch. The creature made a strange, choking sound. It backed away, bumping into one of its companions. All 5 of them seemed to be vibrating slightly, their movements becoming erratic. Wednesday stepped forward, curious now. Are you unwell? You seem distressed. The nearest creature emitted a high-pitched keening noise, something between a shriek and a wail. It shot upward suddenly, as if trying to escape. The others followed suit, scattering in different directions with uncharacteristic haste. How rude, Wednesday commented to the empty air. She watched them flee, disappearing into the stormy night. I only wanted directions. She continued her trek toward the castle, pondering the strange encounter. Whatever those creatures were, they'd clearly found something about her unsettling. The thought brought a tiny, rare smile to her lips. It was always nice to be appreciated. The castle grew larger as she approached. It was even more impressive up close, ancient stone walls, countless windows glowing with warm light, towers reaching toward the turbulent sky. Very Gothic. Very dramatic. Wednesday approved. She reached a set of massive wooden gates and found them locked. Inconvenient, but not insurmountable. Wednesday examined the perimeter and located a smaller side entrance. The lock was old and substantial, but nothing compared to the puzzle locks Uncle Gomez installed on the family crypt for entertainment. Within minutes, she had the door open and slipped inside. The interior was even more promising, stone corridors lit by actual torches, suits of armor standing at attention, and paintings that moved. Wednesday paused, watching as the subject of a nearby portrait, an elderly woman in medieval clothing, turned to look at her with evident surprise. Intriguing, Wednesday murmured. Sentient artwork suggests advanced enchantment. Potentially extra-dimensional in nature. Young lady. What are you doing here? And in such a state, the portrait exclaimed. I'm temporarily dislocated from my dimension of origin, Wednesday explained matter-of-factly. Where am I, exactly? This is Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, of course. And you're dripping all over the floor. Witchcraft and Wizardry, Wednesday repeated, filing away this information. That explains the animated portraiture. Thank you for the clarification. She continued down the corridor, leaving wet footprints and an indignant portrait behind. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead, adult voices, concerned and urgent. Wednesday followed the sound, rounding a corner to find 3 adults in deep conversation. An elderly man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles was speaking to a stern-looking woman in emerald robes and a sallow-faced man dressed entirely in black. They all turned simultaneously as Wednesday approached. Good evening, Wednesday said. I apologize for the interruption. I'm Wednesday Addams. I've been accidentally transported to your dimension and would appreciate assistance returning to mine. The 3 adults stared at her in astonishment. Young lady, the woman in green finally said, how did you get onto the grounds? The castle is protected by powerful enchantments, especially with the Dementors patrolling. Dementors? Is that what those floating entities in the forest were called? They seemed quite agitated by my presence. This statement caused an even greater reaction. The elderly man stepped forward, blue eyes twinkling with interest. The Dementors were agitated by you, he asked gently. They fled after attempting to approach me, Wednesday confirmed. Their intimidation tactics were ineffective, which appeared to cause them distress. The man in black snorted in disbelief. Impossible. Dementors don't feel distress. They cause it. Severus, the elderly man cautioned, then turned back to Wednesday. My dear, I am Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts. This is Professor McGonagall, my deputy headmistress, and Professor Snape, our potions master. You say you're from another dimension? Yes. My dimensional displacer malfunctioned during a lightning strike. I was attempting to create a stable portal between realities. The equipment remained behind while I was transported here. McGonagall's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. You created an interdimensional portal? How old are you, child? 13, Wednesday replied. Though age is merely a number. I've been studying dimensional theory since I was 9. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled even more brightly. Most extraordinary. And these? Dementors. You felt nothing when they approached you. They lowered the ambient temperature and attempted to create an atmosphere of dread. I found it reminiscent of our family greenhouse, actually. Quite pleasant. Snape's sallow face darkened with suspicion. Headmaster, this is absurd. The girl is obviously lying. No one, especially not a child, is immune to Dementors. Wednesday turned her flat gaze to Snape. I assure you, Professor, I have no reason to lie. Dishonesty is inefficient and rarely provides satisfactory results. The entities you called Dementors approached me, attempted to elicit fear, failed, and then retreated in what appeared to be panic. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable, Dumbledore suggested, his voice gentle but his eyes sharp with interest. You're soaking wet, Miss Addams. Let's get you dried off and properly fed while we discuss your situation. Wednesday allowed herself to be led through winding corridors and up several flights of moving staircases, an architectural feature she noted with approval, until they reached a stone gargoyle. Dumbledore murmured something that sounded like, fizzing whiz-bee, and the gargoyle leapt aside, revealing a spiral staircase that moved on its own, carrying them upward. The headmaster's office was a circular room filled with silver instruments, bookcases, and more portraits of sleeping figures. A magnificent red bird perched near the desk, regarding Wednesday with intelligent eyes. A phoenix, she observed. We had one briefly, but it kept resurrecting. Mother found the constant rebirth cycle too cheerful and gifted it to a neighboring necromancer. McGonagall made a choking sound, but Dumbledore merely smiled. This is Fawkes. He's been my companion for many years. Wednesday approached the bird, holding out one pale hand. Fawkes studied her for a moment, then leaned forward to nuzzle her fingers gently. He likes you, Dumbledore noted with surprise. Creatures often do, Wednesday replied. Especially those associated with death and rebirth. Dumbledore waved his wand, and Wednesday's clothes and hair instantly dried. Another wave conjured a comfortable chair and a tray of food and drink. Please, sit. Eat something if you're hungry. Now, perhaps you could tell us more about yourself and how exactly you came to be here. Wednesday perched on the edge of the chair, back straight as a steel rod. She accepted a cup of something called pumpkin juice, but didn't touch the food. With clinical precision, she explained her experiment, the Addams family, and her current predicament. So your family practices magic in your dimension as well? McGonagall asked, fascination overcoming her initial wariness. We practice many things, Wednesday replied. Some might call it magic. Others might call it science, or possibly criminal activity, depending on local statutes. The distinction rarely matters to us. Snape, who had been silently watching from a shadowy corner, finally spoke. And these? Dementors. Describe exactly what happened. Wednesday recounted the encounter in detail, including the creature's reactions. It's as if they tried to feed but couldn't, Dumbledore mused. Or perhaps found something they couldn't digest. If I understand their nature correctly from your explanation, Wednesday said, they consume positive emotions and force humans to relive their worst memories. Precisely, McGonagall confirmed. Then their reaction makes sense. I rarely experience positive emotions to any significant degree, and my worst memories are generally among my favorites. There was a moment of stunned silence. Your favorites? McGonagall repeated weakly. Yes. Like the time I was burned at the stake at summer camp, or when I was buried alive on my 10th birthday. Cherished childhood moments. The professors exchanged alarmed glances. Dumbledore, however, looked thoughtful rather than concerned. Miss Addams, it seems you possess a unique resistance to forces that affect most magical beings profoundly. This could be significant, especially given our current circumstances. You're referring to the Dementors' presence at your school. It seems an unusual security feature for an educational institution. They're searching for an escaped prisoner, Dumbledore explained. A man named Sirius Black, who is believed to pose a threat to one of our students. And these creatures normally inspire fear in your student population? Intentionally. An unfortunate side effect of their presence, Dumbledore admitted. One I've protested, but been overruled on by our ministry. Wednesday's dark eyes narrowed slightly. Your government deliberately stations fear-inducing entities around children? Interesting approach to education. My parents would approve. Snape made an impatient sound. The question remains, what do we do with her? She can't stay at Hogwarts. She's not a student, and we have no idea how to return her to her dimension. Actually, Professor, Wednesday interjected, I believe I could recreate my experiment given the proper materials. My family has been crossing dimensional boundaries for generations, typically accidentally, occasionally on purpose. My great-aunt Demogorgon once spent 3 decades in what she described as a realm of endless torment populated by beings of pure energy. She returned with excellent recipes. Before anyone could respond to this disturbing statement, a silver lynx suddenly appeared in the center of the office. It spoke with a deep, human voice, Albus, the Dementors are behaving strangely. Several have abandoned their posts and refuse to return. The minister is demanding an explanation. The lynx dissolved into silvery mist. A Patronus message from Kingsley, Dumbledore murmured. It seems our Dementors are more disturbed than we realized. McGonagall looked troubled. Albus, if the Dementors are truly afraid of Miss Addams, then we may have an unprecedented situation on our hands, Dumbledore finished. One that requires careful consideration. Wednesday watched this exchange with interest. If these Dementors are as dangerous as you suggest, perhaps their fear of me could be utilized. I'm quite accustomed to inducing terror. Weaponizing a child against Dementors. The ministry would never allow it, Snape scoffed. They needn't know immediately, Dumbledore said quietly. For now, Miss Addams is our guest, a visiting student perhaps, here for cultural exchange. Until we determine how to return her home safely, she'll stay at Hogwarts under our protection. And in which house would you suggest placing her? McGonagall asked, eyebrows raised. Dumbledore studied Wednesday thoughtfully. Perhaps we should let the Sorting Hat decide. He reached for a shabby, patched wizard's hat from a shelf behind his desk. This hat has sorted students into their houses at Hogwarts for 1,000 years, Miss Addams. It looks into your mind and determines where you belong, Gryffindor for the brave, Hufflepuff for the loyal, Ravenclaw for the wise, or Slytherin for the ambitious. Wednesday eyed the hat with scientific curiosity. A sentient magical object capable of psionics. May I examine it more closely? Perhaps after it sorts you, Dumbledore said with amusement, placing the hat on Wednesday's head. There was a long moment of silence. Then the hat twitched, its rip-like mouth opening wide. What in Merlin's name, it shrieked, then went silent again. When it finally spoke, its voice sounded shaken. This one doesn't belong in any house. This one belongs in the darkest depths where even I fear to look. The hat wriggled frantically. Remove me at once. The things I've seen in that mind, the darkness, the void. Dumbledore quickly plucked the hat from Wednesday's head. The magical object seemed to shudder in his hands before going still. Well, McGonagall said after a stunned pause. That's never happened before. Wednesday looked almost pleased. It seems your hat and your Dementors share similar opinions of me. Snape's expression had changed from skepticism to something closer to wary respect. Perhaps Slytherin would be most appropriate. My house tends to appreciate those with darker tendencies. An excellent suggestion, Severus, Dumbledore agreed. Though I think Miss Addams should have guest quarters initially, until she acclimates to our world. Wednesday nodded slightly. Acceptable. Though I'll need access to your library and any materials related to dimensional travel or transference. Also, a basic education in your form of magic might help me understand the principles needed to return home. Of course, Dumbledore assured her. Professor McGonagall will arrange your accommodations, and will provide you with necessary school supplies. For now, I suggest we all get some rest. It's been an eventful evening. As McGonagall led Wednesday from the office, Snape remained behind with Dumbledore. You realize what this means, Snape said quietly once the door closed. A girl who terrifies Dementors. Indeed, Dumbledore murmured, stroking his beard thoughtfully. She may be exactly what we need in these dark times, or something far more dangerous than we can imagine. Morning brought chaos to Hogwarts. News of Wednesday's arrival, and more importantly, her effect on the Dementors, had somehow spread through the school faster than should have been possible. By breakfast, the great hall buzzed with whispers and speculation. Wednesday sat at the end of the Slytherin table, calmly dissecting a sausage with surgical precision while students around her alternated between staring openly and pretending not to look. Her black dress had been supplemented with Slytherin green accessories, but otherwise, she remained distinctly herself, pale, unsmiling, with her signature braids framing a face that revealed nothing. A tall blond boy flanked by two larger students approached, his pointed face wearing an expression of calculated interest. So you're the one everyone's talking about, he drawled. The girl who scared the Dementors. I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Wednesday looked up from her systematic dismemberment of breakfast. Wednesday Addams. Your school has excellent cutlery. Very sharp. Malfoy blinked, thrown off by the non sequitur. Right. Well, anyone who frightens those foul creatures deserves respect in Slytherin. If you need anything, let me know. I need sulfuric acid, crushed mandrake root, and a freshly extracted toad spleen, Wednesday replied without hesitation. For a project. Malfoy's pale face went even paler. I'll see what I can do. He retreated hastily, his bodyguards following in confused silence. Across the hall, another group was watching with intense interest. 3 students at the Gryffindor table, a boy with untidy black hair and glasses, a girl with bushy brown hair, and a tall, red-headed boy, were engaged in fervent whispered conversation while stealing glances at Wednesday. She pretended not to notice, but noted their attention. Information gathering would be essential for navigating this new environment. These students were approximately her age and clearly curious. They might provide useful insights. After breakfast, Professor McGonagall approached with a schedule. Miss Addams, we've arranged for you to audit several classes while you're with us. This should give you a basic understanding of magical principles that might help with your project. Wednesday examined the parchment. Potions, transfiguration, defense against the dark arts, and care of magical creatures. A reasonable selection. When can I access your library's restricted section? McGonagall's lips thinned. The restricted section requires special permission, which is not generally given to guests. I see. And where might I find books on interdimensional travel within the non-restricted areas? I'm not certain we have such texts available, McGonagall admitted. Dimensional magic is extremely advanced and dangerous. So is wandering aimlessly through a foreign magical dimension with no way home, Wednesday countered. The relative danger seems comparable. McGonagall sighed. I'll speak with the headmaster about special access. In the meantime, Professor Snape is expecting you in the dungeons for potions. Don't be late. The dungeons proved to be the most comfortable location Wednesday had encountered thus far at Hogwarts. The cool, damp stone walls, the bubbling cauldrons, the floating specimens in jars of mysterious fluid, it reminded her pleasantly of home. She entered the classroom and found students already seated in pairs. The same trio she'd noticed at breakfast was present, along with Malfoy and other students wearing green-trimmed robes like her own. Professor Snape looked up from his desk. Ah, Miss Addams. Our interdimensional visitor. You may work with Longbottom today. He gestured toward a round-faced, nervous-looking boy who gulped visibly. Perhaps your presence will prevent him from melting another cauldron. Wednesday moved to the indicated workstation. Hello. I'm Wednesday Addams. I once created an acid that dissolved through 16 feet of solid concrete before neutralizing. What are we brewing today? The boy, Longbottom, made a small, frightened sound. And Neville Longbottom, he stammered. And it's a shrinking solution. Fascinating. In my dimension, we use toadstools and virgin's tears for reduction potions. Does yours require blood sacrifice? Neville's eyes widened in horror. And no. Just daisy roots and rat spleens. How disappointingly mundane, Wednesday murmured, but began preparing the ingredients with expert precision. Snape prowled the classroom, criticizing students with cutting remarks. He paused beside Wednesday and Neville's cauldron, clearly expecting disaster. Instead, he found a perfect acid green potion simmering exactly as prescribed. Your technique is adequate, Miss Addams, he said, which seemed to shock the class into silence. Thank you, Professor. I find potion making similar to the chemical experiments I conduct at home. Though your ingredients lack a certain lethality. Snape's lip curled slightly, the closest thing to a smile his face seemed capable of producing. Indeed. Perhaps you'd be interested in more advanced brewing after class someday. I would appreciate that, Wednesday replied. Particularly if it involves toxins. From nearby, the bushy-haired girl was listening intently while still managing her own potion. Wednesday met her curious gaze with an expressionless stare that caused the girl to quickly look away. After class, Wednesday found herself approached by the trio she'd noticed earlier. Hi, the black-haired boy said, somewhat awkwardly. I'm Harry Potter. This is Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley. Wednesday nodded slightly. Wednesday Addams. Is it true? Ron blurted out. About the Dementors? Ron. Hermione hissed, elbowing him. What? Everyone's talking about it. If you're referring to their retreat from my presence, then yes, Wednesday confirmed. They seem to find me distasteful. Harry looked fascinated. How did you do it? I mean, Dementors affect me really badly. I've been trying to learn the Patronus charm, but it's really difficult. I didn't do anything, Wednesday explained. They attempted to provoke fear, failed, and then fled. Apparently, they found something about me unsettling. Unsettling, Ron repeated, looking at her with new respect. Bloody brilliant, that is. Hermione was studying Wednesday with intense curiosity. Professor McGonagall said you're from another dimension. How does interdimensional travel work? Is it similar to apparition? The theoretical principles involve quantum folding and reality displacement, Wednesday began, then noticed Hermione's eyes lighting up with genuine interest while the boys glazed over. But perhaps this isn't the venue for detailed explanation. You could tell me later, Hermione suggested eagerly. I'd love to hear more about your dimension too. Wednesday considered the offer. This girl clearly possessed intelligence and curiosity, useful traits in a potential information source. Acceptable. I require data about this world as well. Perhaps an exchange would be mutually beneficial. Brilliant, Hermione beamed. We have Transfiguration next, are you coming? Wednesday consulted her schedule and nodded. As they walked, Harry fell into step beside her. So, the Dementors, he said quietly. They make me hear my parents being murdered. Wednesday glanced at him. Most people would offer sympathy or discomfort at such a statement. She offered honesty instead. My experiences with death have been predominantly positive. My family celebrates it rather than fears it. Harry looked startled, then thoughtful. That's different. Yes. I've been told that frequently. Before Harry could respond, a commotion ahead caught their attention. A cluster of students had gathered in the corridor, many looking up fearfully. Floating near the ceiling was one of the creatures Wednesday had encountered the previous night, a Dementor. It seemed to be searching for something, drifting slowly down the hallway. Students pressed themselves against walls, some whimpering, others pale and shaking. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on the stone walls. Not again, Harry muttered, his face going white. He reached for his wand with a trembling hand. Wednesday stepped forward, head tilted in curiosity. You're back. Did you forget something in the forest? The Dementor froze. Its hooded head swiveled toward Wednesday's voice. A visible shudder ran through its tattered form. I'm still curious about your physiological structure, Wednesday continued, approaching steadily. Do you have internal organs, or are you composed primarily of ectoplasmic matter? If you remain still, I could run some simple tests. The Dementor made a sound like air being squeezed from a bellows, something between a gasp and a shriek. It shot upward, phasing straight through the ceiling in its haste to escape. Stunned silence fell over the corridor. Every student stared at Wednesday with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Disappointing, Wednesday remarked to no one in particular. I had questions. Whispers erupted immediately. Harry, Ron, and Hermione gaped at her. That was incredible, Ron breathed. It was certainly informative, Wednesday agreed. They appear to retain memory and recognition capabilities. Fascinating. As they continued to Transfiguration, the whispers followed. By lunchtime, Wednesday's reputation had grown to mythic proportions. Stories circulated that she had battled 12 Dementors single-handedly, or that she could kill them with a glance. One first year was convinced she was death incarnate, come to collect the Dementor souls. Wednesday found the attention largely irrelevant, though occasionally useful. When a seventh-year Ravenclaw offered her access to the restricted section in exchange for Dementor protection, she accepted without hesitation. Information was valuable currency. That afternoon, as she sat in the library surrounded by dusty tomes on magical transportation and dimensional theory, Hermione Granger appeared, looking slightly nervous but determined. Mind if I join you? She asked. I thought we could have that exchange of information we talked about. Wednesday gestured to an empty chair. Your timing is convenient. I have questions about wizard-specific transportation methods. Particularly something called apparition. Hermione settled in, visibly relaxing at the academic approach. Well, apparition is a form of magical teleportation. Wizards can disappear from one location and appear almost instantly in another. It requires a license, and you can't do it on Hogwarts grounds because of anti-apparition wards, but, is it limited by dimensional boundaries? Wednesday interrupted. I don't know, Hermione admitted. I've never heard of anyone operating between dimensions. What about portkeys? Your literature mentions they create a hook behind the navel sensation, suggesting they may fold spacetime rather than simply traversing it. Hermione looked impressed. That's actually a fascinating theory. I never considered portkeys might operate on spacetime principles rather than pure magic. But again, I don't think anyone's used one for interdimensional travel. Wednesday made a note in her small black book. What about creatures that can move between planes of existence? Your world must have entities that transcend conventional spatial limitations. Well, ghosts exist partially in another plane, Hermione offered. And house elves can apparate where wizards can't, suggesting they might operate under different magical laws. Oh, and phoenixes can appear and disappear at will. The headmaster's phoenix, Wednesday mused. Yes, that's promising. In my dimension, phoenixes are connected to primordial forces. Their regenerative capabilities suggest a fundamental link to the cosmic constants. Hermione's eyes widened with excitement. That makes sense. Phoenixes are incredibly magical creatures. Dumbledore's phoenix, Fawkes, once transported him through Hogwarts' anti-apparition wards during an emergency. Wednesday's dark eyes gleamed with interest. Transportation through supposedly impenetrable barriers. Definitely worth investigating. Their conversation continued for hours, ranging from magical theory to the fundamental differences between their dimensions. Hermione proved to be an excellent source of information, her encyclopedic knowledge compensating for her occasionally excessive enthusiasm. Your dimension sounds fascinating, Hermione said eventually. Though slightly terrifying. It has its charms, Wednesday agreed. Many of them deadly. Hermione hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. What's it like? Not being afraid of Dementors. Wednesday considered this. I understand fear as a concept. I've studied its effects on others extensively. But what these creatures evoke, the dread of death, the loss of happiness, these are alien concepts to me. In my family, death is a companion, not an enemy. And happiness is, occasional, at best. That's. Hermione seemed at a loss for words. Abnormal? Wednesday suggested. Different, Hermione corrected firmly. But useful, especially now. Harry really struggles with the Dementors. He hears his parents murder when they're near. Wednesday nodded. He mentioned that. An interesting psychological response, though inefficient for survival purposes. Hermione looked scandalized for a moment, then thoughtful. I suppose from a purely practical perspective, strong emotional responses to danger can be counterproductive. Precisely. Emotion clouds judgment. Fear particularly so. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a small, ethereal-looking blonde girl who drifted up to their table with an expression of dreamy interest. Hello, she said in a soft, sing-song voice. You've got a fascinating aura. All swirling blacks and midnight blues. I've never seen anything quite like it. Wednesday assessed the newcomer. You perceive energy fields? Sometimes, the girl replied vaguely. I'm Luna Lovegood. The Raxperts avoid you completely, did you know? They're usually drawn to human brains, but they're circling you like you're the center of a whirlpool, being pulled in and vanishing. Instead of dismissing this bizarre statement, Wednesday looked intrigued. Raxperts are invisible parasitic entities that feed on cognitive function. Luna beamed. Exactly. No one ever understands that. My cousin ITT deals with similar infestations. They nest in his hair during the solstice. Luna sat down without invitation, eyes wide with delight. Does your cousin have methods for deterring them? Father and I have tried everything from dirigible plum earrings to fermented Gertie-root infusions. As Wednesday and Luna launched into a deeply strange conversation about invisible creatures and interdimensional parasites, Hermione looked between them with bewildered fascination. Two of Hogwarts' most unusual residents had apparently found kindred spirits in each other. Evening approached, and Wednesday found herself summoned to the headmaster's office once again. This time, when she arrived, Dumbledore was not alone. A portly man in a lime-green bowler hat stood by the fireplace, looking agitated. Ah, Miss Addams, Dumbledore greeted her. Thank you for joining us. This is Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic. Wednesday nodded politely. Minister. Fudge studied her with undisguised curiosity and suspicion. So you're the girl who's been causing such a commotion with my Dementors. Your Dementors seem easily disturbed, Wednesday replied. An odd quality for entities supposedly designed to instill fear rather than experience it. Fudge puffed up indignantly. Yes, well, that's precisely why I'm here. The Dementors are refusing to patrol certain areas of the grounds. They report discomfort in your presence. Fascinating that they can report anything, Wednesday noted. Their communication abilities suggest higher sentience than their behavior indicates. Miss Addams, Fudge said, clearly struggling to maintain patience, the Ministry needs to understand exactly what you're doing to affect the Dementors. It's a matter of security. Sirius Black is still at large, and without proper patrols, I'm not doing anything to them, Wednesday interrupted. Their reaction appears to be involuntary. Perhaps something in my fundamental nature disrupts whatever psychic frequency they operate on. Nonsense, Fudge blustered. Dementors don't operate on frequencies. They're dark creatures who feed on happiness and inflict despair. Simple as that. Nothing about consciousness is simple, Minister, Wednesday countered. And labeling entities as dark without understanding their full nature seems scientifically unsound. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with amusement. Miss Addams raises an excellent point, Cornelius. Perhaps this situation offers an unprecedented opportunity to study Dementor behavior. Fudge looked uncomfortable. Yes, well, the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures might be interested, but my immediate concern is security. If the Dementors won't patrol properly because of this girl, I could patrol in their place, Wednesday offered, expression neutral as always. I have excellent night vision and a natural affinity for darkness. Both men stared at her. Out of the question, Fudge spluttered. A child patrolling for a mass murderer? Absolutely not. I agree, though for different reasons, Dumbledore said gently. Your safety is our primary concern, Miss Addams, not utilizing your unusual abilities. Wednesday accepted this without argument. As you wish. Though I should mention that someone tried to access my quarters while I was in the library today. They left rather distinctive scratch marks on the door. This statement caused immediate alarm. What? Why wasn't this reported? Fudge demanded. I'm reporting it now, Wednesday pointed out. The marks resembled animal claws rather than human tool work. Large canine, possibly. Fudge went pale. Black's animagus form, he whispered to Dumbledore. It must be. He's in the castle. We cannot jump to conclusions, Cornelius, Dumbledore cautioned. But I will certainly investigate. Miss Addams, you'll be moved to more secure quarters immediately. Wednesday shook her head slightly. Unnecessary. I set up several defensive measures after discovering the intrusion. Anyone attempting entry without proper authorization will find the experience educational. Something in her tone made even Dumbledore look concerned. Perhaps you should describe these measures, so our staff doesn't accidentally trigger them. Simple enough. The primary trigger releases a paralytic gas derived from native flora in my dimension. Non-lethal but highly effective. Secondary systems involve pressure-sensitive floor panels connected to a modified crossbow mechanism. Fudge looked horrified. You've set up deadly traps in a school. Not deadly, Wednesday corrected. Incapacitating. The projectiles are tipped with a mild sedative, not poison. I save the lethal variants for special occasions. Dumbledore cleared his throat. While I admire your ingenuity, Miss Addams, I must insist you dismantle these devices. Hogwarts has its own protective enchantments, which apparently failed to prevent someone scratching at my door, Wednesday pointed out. But I will comply with your request. The primary system can be neutralized with ordinary vinegar. The secondary requires manual disarmament. After providing detailed instructions for safely disabling her improvised security system, Wednesday was dismissed. As she descended the spiral staircase, she heard Fudge's agitated voice, "Albus, that girl is not normal. The things she describes, paralytic gases and crossbow traps, as if they're perfectly ordinary." "Indeed," came Dumbledore's calm reply. "Most extraordinary. And potentially most useful." Wednesday allowed herself a tiny smile as she continued down the corridor. Adults were so predictable, regardless of dimension. They feared what they didn't understand, but their fear quickly transformed to interest when they saw potential utility. She wandered the castle corridors, mentally mapping the layout while considering her situation. Getting home would require significant magical resources or assistance. The Phoenix connection seemed promising. Creatures capable of transcending normal magical barriers might have insights into dimensional boundaries as well. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with Neville Longbottom, who was hurrying around a corner clutching a large, struggling plant. Sorry," he stammered, trying to contain the plant's writhing tendrils. "I wasn't looking where, is that a juvenile venomous tentacula?" Wednesday interrupted, eyeing the plant with interest. Neville looked surprised. "Why yes. Well, a cutting of one. Professor Sprout is letting me try to grow it as a special project." "Fascinating. In my dimension, we have similar carnivorous flora, though ours tend to prefer larger prey. My mother cultivates several varieties that can consume adult humans." Neville's eyes widened in a familiar mixture of horror and reluctant fascination, an expression Wednesday often inspired. "That's terrifying." "They make excellent guardians," Wednesday said with a shrug. "And they're quite affectionate once they recognize family members." Rather than running away as many did when she discussed her family's peculiarities, Neville's expression shifted to genuine curiosity. Do they respond to different types of fertilizer?" "I've been experimenting with dragon dung composition for this one." Wednesday considered the question seriously. "Blood meal produces the most vibrant growth in our specimens. Preferably fresh, though dried works adequately." "Blood meal," Neville repeated, looking thoughtful rather than disturbed. "I suppose that makes sense for carnivorous plants. Their natural diet would contain high nitrogen from blood." For the next 15 minutes, they discussed advanced herbology, finding unexpected common ground in their knowledge of dangerous plants. Neville's nervousness gradually disappeared as he spoke about his area of expertise, revealing a depth of knowledge that Wednesday found surprisingly impressive. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Professor McGonagall, who was looking for Wednesday. "Ah, there you are, Miss Addams. I've been searching for you. There's been another incident with the Dementors. Professor Dumbledore requests your presence immediately." Wednesday bid Neville goodbye and followed McGonagall through the castle and out onto the grounds. As they approached the Quidditch pitch, a strange scene came into view. At least a dozen Dementors hovered at the perimeter, but none entered the pitch itself. They seemed to be in some sort of standoff with the faculty members gathered in the center. Dumbledore stood with Professors Snape, Lupin, and Flitwick, all with wands drawn, surrounding something, or someone, on the ground. As they drew closer, Wednesday saw it was Harry Potter, unconscious and being attended to by Madame Pomfrey, the school nurse. "What happened?" McGonagall asked sharply. "Potter fell from his broom during practice," Snape replied. "Dementors swarmed the pitch. They shouldn't have been anywhere near here. They've been behaving erratically since Miss Addams' arrival," Lupin noted, his tired face grave. "Almost as if they're searching for something. Or avoiding something," Dumbledore added, looking meaningfully at Wednesday. "Miss Addams, I apologize for involving you, but we have a theory we'd like to test. Would you be willing to approach the Dementors at the perimeter?" "With our protection, of course." Wednesday nodded without hesitation. "I require no protection, but I'm willing to participate in your experiment." Dumbledore, Snape, and Lupin flanked her as she walked toward the hovering Dementors. As they drew closer, the creatures became visibly agitated, shifting in the air as if preparing to flee. "Stop here," Dumbledore instructed when they were about 20 yards away. Now, Miss Addams, please walk forward alone. We'll be right behind you if there's any danger. Wednesday advanced steadily. The Dementors' agitation increased with every step. At 10 yards, they began to drift backward, maintaining the distance. At 5 yards, several broke formation entirely, retreating hastily into the darkening sky. Fascinating, Wednesday commented, continuing her approach. They exhibit classic prey behavior when confronted with a perceived predator. The remaining Dementors finally broke, fleeing in all directions with unusual haste. Within moments, the area was clear of their chilling presence. Extraordinary, Lupin breathed. I've never seen anything like it. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. It seems, Miss Addams, that you possess a quality the Dementors find not merely repellent, but actively terrifying. My family often has that effect on others, Wednesday remarked. Though usually on the living. Back at the center of the pitch, Harry was regaining consciousness. He blinked up at the concerned faces around him, then focused on Wednesday. Did you chase them away? He asked weakly. They chose to depart, Wednesday clarified. I merely walked toward them. Harry managed a shaky smile. Wish I could do that. All I do is faint when they come near. Different defensive mechanisms, Wednesday said with a shrug. Yours is physiological shutdown to protect cognitive function. Mine appears to be some form of psychic deterrent. Later that evening, news of the incident spread through the school. Wednesday found herself the subject of even more attention, some fascinated, some fearful, but all intensely curious. The Slytherin common room fell silent when she entered, students watching her with newfound respect. Draco Malfoy approached, less arrogant than before. Is it true you sent a dozen Dementors running with just a glance? Proximity appears to be the triggering factor, not visual contact, Wednesday corrected. But essentially, yes. Whispers erupted around the room. A dark-haired girl leaned forward eagerly. Could you teach others to do it? Wednesday considered this. Unlikely. My effect appears to be innate rather than learned. Something in my fundamental nature disrupts their feeding patterns. What's it like where you come from? Another student asked. Your dimension. Similar to this one in physical laws. Different in social norms, Wednesday replied. My family is considered unusual there, though less so than here. We live in a mansion with a sentient hand as a servant, various carnivorous plants, and an electric chair for recreational use. The Slytherins exchanged glances, clearly unsure whether she was joking. She wasn't. Your family sounds. Malfoy started, then seemed unable to find an appropriate word. Eccentric? Wednesday suggested. Macabre? Homicidal on special occasions? I was going to say interesting, Malfoy finished weakly. That too, Wednesday agreed. After extracting herself from the increasingly bizarre questioning in the Slytherin common room, Wednesday made her way to the castle's highest tower. She needed solitude to think, and heights had always provided clarity. The astronomy tower offered both an excellent vantage point and guaranteed isolation at this hour. Or so she thought. As she pushed open the heavy door to the tower platform, she discovered someone already there, the shabby professor who had accompanied Dumbledore to the Quidditch pitch. Lupin, they'd called him. He was leaning against the parapet, gazing at the nearly full moon with an expression of resignation. He turned at the sound of the door, surprise registering on his tired face. Miss Addams. I didn't expect company at this hour. I can leave if you prefer solitude, Wednesday offered, already turning back toward the door. No, Lupin said quickly. Please, join me. I was just contemplating the moon. Wednesday approached the parapet, standing a respectful distance away. You view it with apprehension rather than appreciation. Interesting. Lupin gave her a sharp look. You're quite observant. Observation is essential for scientific inquiry, Wednesday replied. And your relationship with the lunar cycle appears complex. A tense silence fell between them. Finally, Lupin spoke, his voice quiet. Dumbledore mentioned you have an unusual effect on dark creatures. Apparently so. Though the classification of dark seems subjective and potentially biased. Lupin's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. An unconventional viewpoint in the wizarding world. I specialize in unconventional, Wednesday said. She studied him more carefully. You're not entirely human. Most people would have reacted with shock or denial to such a blunt statement. Lupin merely sighed. What gave it away? Multiple indicators. Your awareness of lunar phases. The silver streaks in your hair despite your relatively young age. Micro-expressions of pain when moving certain joints, suggesting regular physical trauma. And you smell faintly of wolf. I smell of. Lupin shook his head in disbelief. Well, you certainly don't mince words, do you? Efficiency in communication prevents misunderstanding. Fair enough. Lupin turned to face her fully. Yes, I'm a werewolf. A fact very few at this school are aware of, and I'd appreciate your discretion. Wednesday nodded. Of course. My uncle Fenris suffered from similar lycanthropic tendencies, though in his case, the transformation was voluntary and limited to solstice celebrations. Lupin blinked. Your uncle could transform at will. With sufficient motivation and the proper incantation. Usually involving virgin blood and moonstone powder. Family recipes tend toward the traditional. Instead of the horror this statement typically elicited, Lupin laughed, a genuine, if somewhat startled sound. Miss Addams, you are perhaps the most unusual student I've ever encountered. And that's saying something. I'm not technically a student, Wednesday pointed out. Merely a temporally displaced interdimensional visitor. Yes, Dumbledore explained your situation. Remarkable. And your effect on the Dementors. I wonder. If I would have a similar effect on werewolves. Wednesday guessed. An interesting hypothesis. Would you like to test it during the next full moon? Lupin paled slightly. Absolutely not. I take a potion that allows me to retain my mind during transformation, but it's still far too dangerous. Danger is relative, Wednesday replied with a shrug. But I respect your decision. The scientific method requires voluntary test subjects. They stood in surprisingly comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the moon's slow progress across the night sky. Eventually, Wednesday spoke again. Professor Lupin, in your expert opinion as a defense against the dark arts teacher, what would cause Dementors to fear someone? Lupin considered this thoughtfully. Dementors feed on positive emotions and force victims to relive their worst memories. Theoretically, someone without joy to consume or with worst memories that aren't truly traumatic might be unappetizing. But fear? That's unprecedented. Yet they flee from me, Wednesday noted. With increasing vigor upon each encounter. Yes, Lupin agreed. Almost as if they're learning that you're a threat. But what could threaten a Dementor? They're nearly immortal. Everything fears something, Wednesday said. Even death has anxieties. My great-aunt Calpurnia had tea with him once. Apparently, he worries about job security in the face of immortality research. Lupin stared at her for a beat, then shook his head with a bemused smile. I can never quite tell when you're joking. I rarely joke, Wednesday informed him seriously. Humor is inefficient. Well, whatever the reason, your presence has certainly disrupted the Dementors' routine, Lupin said. Harry Potter is particularly grateful. They affect him worse than most. So I've observed. His trauma response is pronounced. Lupin's expression softened. Harry has experienced more loss in his young life than most adults. The Dementors force him to relive his parents' murder, a memory he was too young to consciously recall but that exists in his mind nonetheless. Wednesday absorbed this information. Memory is fascinating. Traumatic imprinting occurs even in infancy, though recall mechanisms differ from adult cognition. You sound like you've studied psychology, Lupin noted with surprise. Among other disciplines. My interests are diverse. A chill wind swept across the tower, but neither of them seemed bothered by it. In the distance, dark shapes moved against the night sky, Dementors patrolling the outer boundaries, keeping their distance from the castle where Wednesday resided. They're learning to avoid you, Lupin observed, following her gaze. Adapting their patterns. Yes, Wednesday agreed. Which suggests higher intelligence than your ministry acknowledges. Sentient beings capable of assessment and strategy. A disturbing thought, Lupin murmured. Especially considering how the ministry employs them. Power structures often underestimate that which they exploit, Wednesday commented. My dimension is no different in that respect. Lupin gave her a curious look. What is your world like? Your family? Wednesday considered how to answer. My parents, Gomez and Morticia, are deeply in love, passionately, violently so. My brother Pugsley enjoys explosives and torture games. Our butler Lurch is 7 feet tall and communicates primarily in groans. We live in a mansion with a sentient hand named Thing, a bald uncle who conducts electricity, a grandmama who brews poisons as a hobby, and various other relatives who visit occasionally from the spirit realm or alternate planes of existence. She paused, noting Lupin's expression. We're considered eccentric. I should say so, Lupin managed. After a moment, he added, they must be worried about you. Wednesday hadn't considered this. The Addams family approach to parenting involved considerable freedom and an assumption of indestructibility. Still, extended interdimensional absence might provoke some concern. Perhaps, she acknowledged. Though they know I'm resilient. When I was 7, I was lost in the Bermuda Triangle for 3 weeks. I returned with several interesting specimens and a mild case of possession. Lupin laughed again, shaking his head. Miss Addams, I think you might be the most self-sufficient 13-year-old I've ever met. Necessity breeds competence, Wednesday replied simply. She moved toward the door. I should return to my quarters. Thank you for the conversation, Professor Lupin. Thank you for the company, he responded. And please, continue to keep my condition confidential. Wednesday nodded once. Your secret is secure. We all have aspects of ourselves we prefer to keep private. In my case, it's my collection of rare torture devices. In yours, it's monthly hirsutism and carnivorous tendencies. With that uniquely Wednesday farewell, she departed, leaving Lupin staring after her with an expression balanced between concern and amusement. The next morning, Wednesday woke to find a small, neatly wrapped package outside her door. Attached was a note in elegant handwriting, Miss Addams, this may assist in your research. Use it wisely and return it when your studies are complete. The restricted section is most active after midnight. APWBD inside the package was a silvery, fluid-like cloak. Wednesday examined it with scientific curiosity, noting its unusual properties, lighter than air, cooler than the ambient temperature, and with a curious shimmering quality unlike any textile she'd encountered. When she draped it over her arm, the limb vanished completely from view. An invisibility cloak, she murmured. Practical. That night, she put it to immediate use, slipping out of her quarters after curfew and navigating the silent corridors to the library. The restricted section awaited, its forbidden knowledge finally accessible thanks to Dumbledore's gift. As she browsed the dangerous texts, a soft noise caught her attention, the unmistakable sound of someone trying very hard to be silent. Wednesday remained perfectly still, listening intently. Footsteps, hesitant and furtive, approached her section of the library. Wednesday waited, invisible beneath her borrowed cloak. The footsteps drew closer, then stopped. A whispered "Lumos" illuminated a wand tip, revealing Hermione Granger's face, looking nervous but determined. I know you're here somewhere, Hermione whispered to the apparently empty aisle. Harry saw you on the map, heading to the library. I thought you might need help with research. Wednesday considered her options, then removed the cloak. Hermione jumped slightly but managed not to scream. Your assistance could be efficient, Wednesday acknowledged. I'm looking for information on interdimensional travel or entities capable of moving between realities. Hermione's initial startlement gave way to academic interest. I've been thinking about your situation. If you're really from another dimension, conventional magical transportation wouldn't work. You'd need something that operates outside normal magical constraints. Precisely my conclusion, Wednesday agreed. Your Phoenix seems the most promising lead so far. They set to work, pulling books with promising titles and skimming through ancient texts. Hours passed in companionable research, broken only by occasional whispered exchanges. Hermione proved to be an excellent research partner, methodical, thorough, and capable of processing information quickly. Around 3 in the morning, Hermione gasped softly. Wednesday, look at this. She pushed a heavy tome toward Wednesday, pointing to a passage about something called the Veil. The Department of Mysteries houses an ancient archway, Wednesday read aloud, believed by some scholars to be a gateway between the world of the living and the dead. However, alternative theories suggest it may instead be a portal to parallel dimensions or alternate realities, as objects and beings that pass through it do not conform to normal patterns of spiritual transition. The Department of Mysteries is at the Ministry of Magic, Hermione explained quietly. It's where they study the most secret and powerful magic. If there's a way to send you home, that might be it. The description is promising, Wednesday agreed. Though access appears restricted. Extremely, Hermione confirmed. Only unspeakables, special ministry researchers, are allowed in. Getting permission to use it would be nearly impossible. Wednesday closed the book thoughtfully. Permission is often an unnecessary complication. Hermione looked alarmed. You can't be thinking of breaking into the Ministry of Magic. That's insane, not to mention illegal. Legality is relative when stranded in an alternate dimension, Wednesday pointed out. But I acknowledge the practical difficulties. Perhaps there are alternative approaches. Their research continued, yielding tantalizing fragments but no complete solution. As dawn approached, they gathered their findings and prepared to return to their respective quarters. Thank you for your assistance, Wednesday said as they parted at a corridor junction. Your research skills are impressive. Hermione beamed at the rare compliment. I'll keep looking. There must be a way to get you home. Home would be preferable, Wednesday agreed. Though this dimension has its interesting aspects. Particularly the Dementors. I've been considering capturing one for further study. Hermione's expression shifted from pleased to horrified. You can't capture a Dementor. That's challenging but potentially informative, Wednesday finished. Their biological composition remains mysterious. Dissection might provide valuable insights. You want to dissect a Dementor? Hermione's voice rose to a squeak before she remembered they were supposed to be sneaking. That's impossible. They're not even fully corporeal. All matter can be analyzed with the proper tools, Wednesday insisted. Even semi-corporeal entities have structural compositions. Hermione looked like she wanted to argue further but thought better of it. Just, be careful. Promise me you won't do anything dangerous without telling someone first. Wednesday considered this request. Define dangerous. Anything that could get you killed, imprisoned, or permanently maimed, Hermione clarified with impressive specificity. Those parameters seem reasonable, Wednesday conceded. I promise to inform you before undertaking activities with high probability of death, incarceration, or significant bodily harm. That's reassuring, I guess, Hermione said, looking not at all reassured. Good night, Wednesday. Good night, Hermione. As Wednesday returned to her quarters, she reflected on the information they'd gathered. The Veil sounded promising but accessing it presented significant challenges. Perhaps there were other approaches, magical artifacts or creatures with dimensional crossing abilities. Her thoughts were interrupted by a strange sound from a nearby corridor, a soft whimpering, followed by the scrape of claws on stone. Wednesday paused, listening intently. The sound came again, closer this time. She tightened her grip on her wand, a loner from the school, as she had no magical focus of her own, and waited. Around the corner came a large, black, shaggy dog, moving with a limp. It froze when it saw her, hackles rising. "You're the one who scratched my door," Wednesday observed calmly. "Animagus or genuine canine?" The dog growled softly, backing away a step. "If you're an animagus, communication would be more efficient in human form," Wednesday continued. "If you're a regular dog, I know several excellent remedies for paw injuries. My cousin once had his entire leg reattached after an unfortunate incident with a combine harvester." The dog stared at her for a long moment, then, amazingly, seemed to nod. Before Wednesday's eyes, it transformed, stretching and reshaping until a gaunt, haunted-looking man with matted black hair stood before her. His clothes were ragged, his face hollow with suffering and privation. "You're not afraid," he said hoarsely, as if unused to speaking. Most people would scream or run at the sight of Sirius Black. "Fear is inefficient," Wednesday replied. "And names rarely frighten me. Actions might, depending on their nature and execution." The man, Sirius, gave a bark-like laugh, though it held little humor. "Smart girl. What are you doing wandering the corridors at night?" "Student, I presume." "Visitor," Wednesday corrected. "Temporarily displaced from my dimension." "You're the escaped prisoner the floating entities are hunting." "Dementors," Sirius spat the word. "Yes, they're looking for me. Old friends of mine from Azkaban prison. They seem ineffective at their assigned task," Wednesday noted. "Since you're clearly not captured." "They're not the brightest creatures," Sirius agreed. "Though they excel at making life a living hell." He studied her with newfound interest. "Different dimension, you said? That explains a lot. There's something different about you." "Not quite right. I've been told that frequently, regardless of dimensional location," Wednesday said. "Are you actually guilty of the crimes you're accused of?" The blunt question seemed to catch Sirius off guard. He stared at her, then laughed again, a harsh, broken sound. "No. But you're the first person to actually ask." "Assumptions of guilt without evidence are illogical," Wednesday stated. "Though common in justice systems across dimensions, apparently." Sirius took a step closer, wincing slightly as he put weight on his injured leg. "You're an unusual child. What's your name?" "Wednesday Addams." "Wednesday," he repeated. "Like the day of the week?" She nodded. "My mother has an affinity for the morbid and gothic. My brother is named Pugsley." "Fitting, somehow," Sirius murmured. He glanced nervously down the corridor. "I should go. Not safe to stay in one place too long." "Your leg requires treatment," Wednesday pointed out. "Infection is likely in its current state." "I'll manage." "Unnecessary suffering serves no purpose," Wednesday countered. "I have medical supplies in my quarters. Basic wound treatment would take approximately 12 minutes and significantly increase your mobility." Sirius hesitated, clearly torn between caution and the obvious pain he was in. "Why would you help me?" "I'm a wanted criminal." "Your legal status is irrelevant to me," Wednesday explained. "And your enhanced mobility may prove useful if you possess information about this world's dimensional boundaries." A slow, confused smile spread across Sirius's gaunt face. "That's the strangest offer of help I've ever received. But I'll take it." Chapter 2, Soul's Signature. "Hold still," Wednesday instructed, applying a foul-smelling paste to Sirius Black's wounded leg. "This will sting momentarily, then burn significantly, then go completely numb. The sensation of insects crawling beneath your skin is normal and temporary. Sirius hissed through clenched teeth as the paste began to work. What exactly is in this? Family recipe, Wednesday replied, watching with clinical interest as the deep gash began to knit itself closed. Primarily nightshade extract, powdered bone of an unrepentant murderer, and several ingredients best not mentioned in polite company. Uncle Fester adds eye of newt for traditional value, but I find it redundant. They sat in Wednesday's quarters, a small stone room in a seldom-used corridor that Dumbledore had provided. She'd transformed it to suit her tastes, black candles in iron holders, a collection of small bottled specimens lining the shelves, and a makeshift laboratory setup in one corner. Her four-poster bed was draped with dark fabric that Wednesday had dyed herself using squid ink from the Black Lake. Sirius looked around, grimacing through the pain. Cozy. Very gothic. It's functional, Wednesday said with a shrug. Though lacking certain comforts of home. We have a rack that's been in the family for 15 generations. Excellent for stretching after a long day. A rack. For torture. Sirius didn't phrase it as a question. For posture correction, Wednesday corrected mildly. Though it serves multiple purposes. The wound on Sirius's leg had closed completely, leaving an angry red line that was already fading to pink. He flexed experimentally, eyes widening in surprise. That's incredible. I haven't felt this good in years. The paste includes mild regenerative properties, Wednesday explained, packing away her medical supplies. Grandmama uses it on cousin ITT when he gets his hair caught in machinery. Sirius studied her with curious intensity. You're not afraid of me. You're not afraid of anything, are you? Fear is rarely practical, Wednesday replied. Though I maintain a healthy respect for my mother's gardening shears. A ghost of a smile crossed Sirius's gaunt face. He looked marginally better after accepting the sandwich and water Wednesday had provided from her private stash. Still dangerously thin and haunted, but more human than the feral creature who'd limped into her path. The Dementors are hunting you, Wednesday noted. Yet you risk entering the castle. Why? Sirius's expression darkened. I'm not after Harry Potter, if that's what everyone thinks. I'm trying to protect him. From what? Peter Pettigrew. Sirius spat the name like poison. The man who betrayed James and Lily Potter. The man who framed me and spent the last 12 years hiding as a rat. A metaphorical rat or an actual rodent? Both, Sirius growled. He's an animagus like me. His form is a rat, and he's been living as a pet with the Weasley family. Ron Weasley's rat, Scabbers. Wednesday absorbed this information with her usual clinical detachment. Interesting. Hidden in plain sight while you suffered imprisonment. Elegant in its simplicity, if morally reprehensible. Elegant? Sirius barked a harsh laugh. That's one way to put it. Effectiveness and morality are separate evaluations, Wednesday pointed out. One can acknowledge strategic success while condemning ethical failure. Sirius stared at her, then shook his head in bemusement. You're the strangest child I've ever met. And considering I went to school with Severus Snape, that's saying something. Wednesday accepted this as the compliment it was clearly intended to be. You need to capture this Pettigrew to prove your innocence. Logical, but challenging given your fugitive status and his small, easily hidden form. Exactly my problem, Sirius agreed. I can't get into Gryffindor Tower where he stays, and even if I could, I'd be spotted immediately. Wednesday considered the problem. You need an intermediary. Someone with access who won't immediately report you. Harry would help if I could explain everything to him, but getting to him alone is nearly impossible with the security around him. Perhaps I could facilitate communication, Wednesday suggested. I've established a research partnership with Hermione Granger, who associates closely with Harry Potter. Creating an opportunity for private conversation should be manageable. Sirius looked at her with renewed interest. You'd help me? Why? 3 reasons, Wednesday said, ticking them off on her fingers. First, justice is logical, and your continued persecution without evidence is inefficient. Second, I require allies with knowledge of magical systems beyond what's taught to students. Third, I find the idea of a man living as a rat for 12 years scientifically fascinating. A strangled sound escaped Sirius, something between a laugh and a sob. You know, in a very odd way, you remind me of my family. Not the good parts, mind you, they were horrible people. But that clinical, detached way of looking at the world. He trailed off, studying her. The blacks would have appreciated your particular perspective. The Addams family perspective has historically been considered unconventional, Wednesday acknowledged. We tend to see beauty where others see darkness. And what do you see when you look at the Dementors? Sirius asked suddenly. I've heard rumors, they say you sent a dozen of them running at the Quidditch pitch. That they're afraid of you. Wednesday tilted her head slightly, considering. They appear to find something about me disturbing. Perhaps my soul doesn't provide whatever sustenance they require. It's more than that, Sirius insisted. Dementors ignore people they can't feed on. They don't flee from them in terror. An interesting distinction, Wednesday acknowledged. Perhaps we should capture one for proper analysis. Sirius stared at her for a beat, then barked out a genuine laugh. Capture a Dementor? For analysis. You're serious? No, you're serious, Wednesday replied, her face completely impassive. I'm Wednesday. For a moment, Sirius looked stunned. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a real laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine. A joke. By Merlin, you made a joke. Occasionally I indulge, Wednesday admitted, the faintest hint of amusement touching her eyes. My father believes humor is essential for a balanced personality. He's objectively wrong, of course, but I humor him. Still chuckling, Sirius rose to his feet, testing his newly healed leg. I should go. It's not safe to stay in one place too long. Where will you hide? The Forbidden Forest mostly. There's a cave in the mountains too. Wednesday nodded. I'll contact you when I've arranged a meeting with Harry Potter. Until then, take this. She handed him a small black pouch. Additional wound paste and preserved food. My mother's recipe, roadkill tartare. High in protein and essential nutrients. Sirius accepted the pouch with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. Roadkill tartare. How thoughtful. It's a family favorite, Wednesday assured him. Though I should warn you that temporary hair growth on the palms is a common side effect. With a final bemused shake of his head, Sirius transformed back into his dog form. Wednesday opened her door a crack, checked the corridor, then nodded. The great black dog slipped out and padded away into the shadows. Alone again, Wednesday returned to her research notes. The encounter with Sirius had been informative but had done little to advance her primary goal of returning home. The veil mentioned in the restricted section remained her most promising lead, though accessing the Department of Mysteries presented significant challenges. She picked up the invisibility cloak Dumbledore had lent her, running the fluid-like material through her fingers. A tool for accessing restricted areas. Useful, but limited to Hogwarts. The Ministry would have different, possibly more advanced security measures. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Wednesday tucked the cloak away and opened the door to find Luna Lovegood standing there, looking even more ethereal than usual in the dim corridor light. Hello, Wednesday, Luna said dreamily. I thought you might want to come with me to feed the Thestrals. They're particularly active tonight, the moon phase affects their digestion. Wednesday considered the invitation. Her research had reached a temporary impasse, and Thestrals, skeletal, winged horses visible only to those who had witnessed death, sounded intriguing. I'd like that, she decided. Do they prefer fresh meat, or will preserved specimens suffice? Oh, fresh is always best, Luna replied. I've brought some raw beef from the kitchens. The house elves are very accommodating if you ask politely. They walked together through the quiet castle and out onto the grounds. The night air was crisp, stars bright overhead in a cloudless sky. Luna led the way toward the forbidden forest with the confidence of someone following a familiar path. "You're not afraid of the forest at night?" Wednesday asked, noting Luna's casual demeanor. "Not particularly," Luna replied. "The creatures here understand me, mostly. And the dangerous ones usually give warning before they attack." "Logical," Wednesday approved. Predator-prey relationships typically involve clear signaling patterns. They reached a clearing where several thestrals were already gathered. The creatures were even more fascinating than Wednesday had anticipated, perfectly skeletal, with reptilian faces and leathery bat-like wings. Their glossy black hide stretched tight over visible bone structures, and their blank white eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "They're beautiful," Wednesday said softly, approaching the nearest one without hesitation. Luna smiled. "Most people find them disturbing. Or can't see them at all. Most people lack appreciation for the aesthetic value of mortality," Wednesday replied, gently stroking the thestral's bony neck. The creature leaned into her touch like a cat seeking affection. "They really like you," Luna observed, distributing chunks of raw meat to the gathering herd. "More than they usually like strangers. Maybe it's your aura, it has the same sort of colors as theirs." Wednesday accepted this assessment without question. Luna's perception might be expressed in unconventional terms, but her observations often contained underlying validity. "You've seen death," Wednesday noted, taking a piece of meat from Luna and offering it to a young thestral. Not a question, but an observation, since Luna could clearly see the creatures too. "My mother," Luna confirmed, her dreamy voice momentarily touched with sadness. "She was quite an extraordinary witch, but she liked to experiment. One of her spells went rather badly wrong when I was 9. "My condolences on your loss," Wednesday said formally. "Though I'm sure her spirit appreciates your continued innovation in her absence." Luna brightened. "I think so too. Sometimes I feel her watching when I discover a new creature or spell. It's rather comforting." They fed the thestrals in companionable silence for several minutes. The creatures were gentle despite their fearsome appearance, taking meat delicately from their hands and occasionally nudging them for more attention. "You're not from here, are you?" Luna asked suddenly. "Not just from another school or country. From somewhere much further away." Wednesday glanced at her sharply. "What makes you say that?" "Oh, lots of things," Luna said vaguely. "The way the castle's magic responds to you, like it's trying to figure you out. The way creatures react to you. And your aura, of course, it has patterns I've never seen before. Swirling in directions that shouldn't be possible." Instead of dismissing these observations as others might have, Wednesday considered them seriously. "You're correct. I'm from another dimension. Temporarily displaced due to an experiment." Luna nodded as if this explained everything. "That's why the Dementors are afraid of you. Your soul has a different signature than ours, like trying to read a book written in another language." This was the most insightful theory anyone had yet proposed regarding the Dementors' reaction to her. Wednesday felt a new respect for Luna's unusual perspective. "A different soul signature," she repeated thoughtfully. "That would explain their inability to process my emotional energy." "It's more than that, I think," Luna mused, tossing the last piece of meat to a particularly small thestral. "Dementors feed on positive emotions and force you to relive your worst memories. But your worst memories might be their equivalent of indigestible food, or even poison." Wednesday considered this. "My family celebrates experiences most would consider traumatic. Death, pain, suffering, these are often cherished memories rather than sources of distress." "Exactly," Luna said brightly. "You're like a beautiful but poisonous flower, attractive to hungry creatures, but toxic when consumed." The analogy was surprisingly apparent. Wednesday filed this theory away for further consideration. If Luna was right, her effect on the Dementors might be more than just repulsion, it might be actively harmful to them. Their conversation was interrupted by a rustling in the trees at the edge of the clearing. The Thestrals raised their skeletal heads, nostrils flaring, but didn't appear alarmed. A moment later, the massive form of Hagrid emerged from the forest. "Luna! What are ye doin' out here this late?" And he stopped short when he spotted Wednesday. "You're the new girl, aren't ye? The one the Dementors can't stand?" "Wednesday Addams," she confirmed with a slight nod. "We're feeding the Thestrals. They have excellent bone structure." Hagrid blinked, clearly thrown by this comment, but recovered quickly. "Ye can see, then? Both of ye?" "Yes," Luna replied cheerfully. "Wednesday thinks they're beautiful too." "Well, they are, no doubt about it," Hagrid agreed, his initial concern fading to enthusiasm. "Smart creatures, Thestrals. Dead useful too, they pull the school carriages, ye know." "Fascinating," Wednesday said, genuinely interested. "In my dimension, we have similar entities, though ours tend toward more aggressive behavior patterns. My mother's prized midnight stallion once devoured an entire door-to-door salesman. His sample case was never recovered." There was a moment of stunned silence from Hagrid before he let out an uncertain laugh. "Yevi got a strange sense o' humor, I'll give ye that." "I wasn't joking," Wednesday clarified. "Though the digestive processes of supernatural entities often do present humorous complications. The salamanders lived in the sample case for weeks afterward." Hagrid stared at her, then shook his massive head. "Ye two should be gettin' back to the castle. Not safe out here, what with?" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. "Sirius Black, supposedly." "We were just finishing," Luna assured him. "The Thestrals have had their fill." As if to confirm this, the creatures were already drifting away, melting into the darkness of the forest with supernatural grace. Wednesday watched them go with reluctant admiration. "Very well," she agreed. "Thank you for introducing me to them, Luna." "Oh, it was my pleasure," Luna said serenely. "They liked you. That's always a good sign, Thestrals can sense people's true nature." Hagrid escorted them back to the castle, filling the walk with nervous chatter about various creatures and the upcoming Care of Magical Creatures lesson. Wednesday listened with polite interest, filing away potentially useful information about magical beasts. At the entrance hall, they parted ways, Luna heading toward Ravenclaw Tower, Hagrid returning to his hut, and Wednesday making her way back to her private quarters. The corridors were silent and empty, most students long since in bed. Or so it appeared. As Wednesday rounded a corner near the library, she caught a flash of movement, someone ducking into an empty classroom. Curious, she approached silently, peering through the partially open door. Inside, Harry Potter stood alone, practicing wand movements with intense concentration. He repeated the same motion again and again, muttering what sounded like expecto patronum under his breath. Each attempt produced varying amounts of silvery mist from his wand, but nothing substantial. Wednesday watched for several minutes, analyzing his technique. The spell appeared to require significant emotional input along with precise wand work. Harry's frustration was evident in his increasingly forceful movements. "You're trying too hard," she said finally, pushing the door open fully. Harry jumped, nearly dropping his wand. "Wednesday. You scared me." "An unintentional but frequent occurrence," she acknowledged. "The Patronus charm, I presume." "How did you know?" "Professor Lupin mentioned you were learning it. A defense against Dementors. Logical, given your particular sensitivity to them." Harry sighed, lowering his wand. "I'm making progress, but it's not good enough. I can't produce a full corporeal Patronus yet." Wednesday considered this. "The spell requires positive emotions, correct? Happy memories?" "The happiest memory you have," Harry confirmed. "That's the hard part." "Fascinating," Wednesday murmured. "Emotional magic. Highly subjective and therefore inconsistent. Inefficient design. Harry smiled slightly. Yeah, well, no one asked my opinion when they invented it. He hesitated, then asked the question Wednesday had been expecting since their first meeting. Is it true you're immune to Dementors? That they're actually afraid of you? Apparently so, Wednesday confirmed. Though I've done nothing intentional to create this effect. What's it like? Harry asked, a hint of envy in his voice. Not feeling anything when they're near? Wednesday considered the question carefully. I feel their presence. The temperature drop. The atmospheric changes. I simply don't experience the emotional effects others describe. Lucky, Harry muttered. Perhaps, Wednesday allowed. Though it appears to be a side effect of my interdimensional origin rather than any personal merit. Harry looked intrigued. About that, is it true you're from another dimension? Like, a completely different world? A parallel reality with different magical parameters but similar physical laws, Wednesday clarified. My family practices what you might call magic, though we don't use wands or standardized incantations. That's incredible, Harry said, genuine wonder in his voice. What's it like there? Your world. Similar to this one in many ways. Though my family is considered unusual by local standards. We live in a mansion on a hill, surrounded by a graveyard. My father collects torture devices. My mother breeds carnivorous plants. My brother enjoys explosives. We're happy, in our way. Harry's expression shifted from fascination to something like recognition. Your family sounds different. But in a good way. Like they accept who they are. The Addams family has never concerned itself with external validation, Wednesday confirmed. We exist according to our nature, regardless of societal expectations. I wish the wizarding world was more like that, Harry said with surprising bitterness. Everything here is about houses and blood status and who your parents were. And everyone expects me to be something specific because of what happened when I was a baby. Wednesday studied him with new interest. Being defined by others is inefficient. Self-determination is more logical. Exactly. Harry agreed emphatically. I just want to be normal sometimes. Normal is overrated, Wednesday said flatly. And subjective. In my family, serving arsenic with tea is normal. Expressing excessive joy is deviant behavior. Harry laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. I think I'd like your family. They'd find you interesting, Wednesday replied, which from an Addams was high praise indeed. Harry raised his wand again, returning to his practice. I should get back to this. Lupin's giving me another lesson tomorrow, and I want to show some improvement. Wednesday watched him attempt the spell again, producing another cloud of silver mist that dissipated quickly. An idea occurred to her. Have you considered that happiness might not be your most powerful positive emotion? Harry paused, looking confused. What do you mean? The spell requires positive emotional energy, but happiness is merely one form of positive emotion. For some, determination might be stronger. Or courage. Or even righteous anger. Harry's eyes widened slightly. I never thought of it that way. Different individuals have different emotional strengths, Wednesday continued. My cousin ITT, for instance, experiences joy primarily through destroying expensive furniture. My mother finds emotional fulfillment in cultivating deadly nightshade. Happiness is subjective. Harry considered this for a long moment, then raised his wand again. This time, his face set in an expression of fierce determination rather than strained happiness. Expecto Patronum. The silver mist that erupted from his wand was stronger this time, coalescing into a vaguely animal shape before dissipating. Harry stared in amazement. That was almost a real Patronus. Interesting, Wednesday observed. It appears emotional authenticity is more effective than forced happiness. Harry looked at her with newfound respect. That's brilliant advice. I'll try that approach with Lupin tomorrow. He hesitated, then added, you know, you'd make a good teacher. An unexpected assessment, Wednesday replied. I generally prefer solitary research to interpersonal instruction. Still, Harry insisted, you explained that better than anyone else has. Thanks. Wednesday accepted the gratitude with a slight nod. I should go. It's late, and I have research to continue. Right, Harry agreed. I should probably get back to Gryffindor Tower before someone notices I'm gone. As she turned to leave, Wednesday remembered her conversation with Sirius. Harry, I may have information of interest to you. Regarding Sirius Black. Harry's expression immediately darkened. What about him? Not here, Wednesday said quietly. Tomorrow. By the Black Lake after classes. Bring Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley if you trust them completely. You know something about Black? Harry demanded, suddenly intense. I know many things, Wednesday replied cryptically. Some of which may alter your perception of recent events. Before Harry could press further, she slipped out of the classroom and into the shadowy corridor, leaving him staring after her with mingled confusion and curiosity. Morning brought an unexpected summons. Professor McGonagall intercepted Wednesday on her way to breakfast, her expression unusually grave. Miss Addams, your presence is required in the headmaster's office immediately. There have been developments. Wednesday followed without question, mentally reviewing potential scenarios. Had they discovered Sirius in the castle? Had her late-night excursions been noted? Or perhaps something related to her dimensional displacement? The gargoyle leapt aside at McGonagall's password, and they ascended to find Dumbledore's office more crowded than usual. The headmaster himself stood behind his desk, looking troubled. Beside him was Minister Fudge, his lime-green bowler hat clutched nervously in his hands. Professor Snape lurked near the window, his expression unreadable. And most surprisingly, a tall, severe-looking wizard in dark robes stood examining one of Dumbledore's silver instruments with clinical interest. Ah, Miss Addams, Dumbledore greeted her. Thank you for joining us. Allow me to introduce Broderick Bode, an unspeakable from the Department of Mysteries. Wednesday's interest sharpened immediately. The Department of Mysteries, home of the veil she'd read about. This could be fortuitous. Mr. Bode, she acknowledged with a slight nod. The unspeakable turned to study her, his gaze penetrating and analytical. Miss Addams. I've heard fascinating reports about you. His voice was unexpectedly deep and melodic, at odds with his austere appearance. Miss Addams, Fudge began, his tone attempting authority but betrayed by nervous fidgeting, Mr. Bode has come from the Ministry to observe your interaction with the Dementors. For research purposes. I see, Wednesday replied calmly. You wish to study the anomalous reaction they display in my presence. Precisely, Bode confirmed, stepping closer. The Department of Mysteries has maintained extensive records on Dementor behavior for centuries. Never have we documented a case of Dementors experiencing fear. An unprecedented opportunity for scientific advancement, Wednesday noted. I'm willing to participate in controlled observation. Bode's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. Excellent. I've arranged a secure location on the grounds where we can conduct our examination without endangering the student population. Now see here, Bode, Fudge interjected, I agreed to observation only. The minister must approve any direct experimentation with Dementors, especially with a child involved. Of course, Minister, Bode replied smoothly. Merely observation of natural interactions. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained serious. I've agreed to allow this research, Miss Addams, but only with your full consent and under strict safety protocols. Professor Snape and I will accompany you at all times. A sensible precaution, Wednesday acknowledged, though unnecessary for my protection. I experience no negative effects from Dementor proximity. Nevertheless, Dumbledore insisted gently. Snape stepped forward from his position by the window. The girl should be made aware of the potential risks, Headmaster. Prolonged Dementor exposure has been known to cause lasting psychological damage, regardless of initial resistance. I appreciate the concern, Wednesday said, but my family has a history of immunity to psychological damage. My grandmother spent 50 years in an asylum before they finally released her. On the doctor's request. A brief, uncomfortable silence followed this statement. Well then, Bode said finally. Shall we proceed? I've arranged for 3 Dementors to meet us at the selected location. Properly controlled, of course. 3. Fudge looked alarmed. I thought we agreed on 1. A single specimen provides limited data, Bode explained with the patience of someone addressing a child. Multiple subjects allow for observation of group behavior. Essential for proper analysis. Wednesday found herself appreciating the unspeakable scientific approach, despite the wariness she sensed from the others regarding him. Someone who valued data and analysis was rare in this emotion-driven magical society. They made their way down to the grounds, a strange procession of powerful wizards surrounding one small, solemn girl in a black dress. Students watched curiously from windows and doorways as they passed. Bode led them to a clearing at the edge of the forbidden forest, far from the usual student paths but still within Hogwarts' protective boundaries. A shimmering magical barrier had been erected, forming a large circular containment area. The Dementors will remain within this enclosure, Bode explained. You may enter and exit freely, Miss Addams, while we observe from outside. Wednesday studied the arrangement with approval. A logical setup. Will you be measuring atmospheric conditions as well? Dementors appear to induce localized temperature reduction and environmental effects that may provide insight into their physical composition. Bode looked at her with new interest. Indeed. I've placed multiple detection charms throughout the enclosure to record such changes. He removed a small silver device from his robes. This will measure psychic emanations as well, the emotional field Dementors generate and feed upon. Fascinating, Wednesday murmured, examining the device. Similar to instruments my family uses for seances, though more refined. You conduct seances in your dimension? Bode asked, suddenly intensely interested. Regularly, Wednesday confirmed. Communication with deceased relatives is a family tradition. Great-Aunt Demogorgon has been providing investment advice from beyond the grave for decades. Her portfolio consistently outperforms the market. Before Bode could pursue this line of questioning, Dumbledore gently interrupted. Perhaps we should proceed with the planned observation, Broderick. I'm sure you and Miss Addams can discuss interdimensional spiritualism another time. Bode nodded reluctantly and raised his wand. With a complex movement, he sent up a shower of silver sparks that hung in the air momentarily before dissolving. A signal, he explained. The Dementors will arrive momentarily. The temperature plummeted almost immediately. Frost formed on the grass around them, spreading in crystalline patterns toward the containment area. From the edge of the forest, 3 hooded figures emerged, gliding silently over the frozen ground. Fudge took several steps backward, his face pale. Even Snape's sallow complexion seemed to lose what little color it possessed. Only Dumbledore, Wednesday, and Bode remained unmoved as the Dementors approached the barrier. Notice their formation, Bode murmured, scribbling notes on a pad he'd produced from his robes. Triangular approach pattern. Standard hunting configuration. The Dementors reached the barrier and paused, seeming to test it with outstretched, decayed hands. Then, as one, they turned toward Wednesday. Even with their faces hidden in the depths of their hoods, their focus was palpable. They've detected your presence, Bode noted. Fascinating. From outside the containment field. Their sensory capabilities extend beyond physical limitations. Shall I enter the enclosure? Wednesday asked, watching the creatures with clinical interest. Please, Bode confirmed eagerly. Move slowly and observe their reactions. Wednesday approached the shimmering barrier. The Dementors remained motionless, watching her advance. As she passed through the magical field, a visible tremor ran through all three creatures simultaneously. They drifted backward, maintaining distance. "They're retreating already," Snape observed, surprise evident in his voice. Without any offensive action on her part. "Continue advancing, Miss Addams," Bode instructed, his voice tight with excitement. "Directly toward them if you please." Wednesday complied, walking steadily toward the three Dementors. They continued to retreat, maintaining the exact same distance regardless of her pace. When she stopped, they stopped. When she moved left, they shifted right, preserving the space between them. "They're orbiting her," Bode whispered, furiously taking notes. "Like moons around a planet, keeping maximum distance while remaining within the containment field." Wednesday decided to test a theory. She took 3 rapid steps forward. The Dementors recoiled dramatically, one actually colliding with the barrier in its haste to retreat. The creature let out a high, cold sound, something between a hiss and a shriek. "They fear her," Dumbledore stated quietly. "Genuinely fear her. I've never seen anything like it." "Miss Addams," Bode called, barely containing his excitement, "please extend your hand toward them," as if reaching out. Wednesday raised one pale hand, palm forward, toward the nearest Dementor. The reaction was immediate and violent. The creature convulsed, its tattered robes writhing around it as if caught in a windstorm. It emitted the same high-pitched keening noise, louder this time. The other 2 Dementors pressed themselves against the far side of the barrier, as far from Wednesday as possible. "Extraordinary!" Bode exclaimed. "The psychic readings are off the scale. It's as if," he stopped abruptly, staring at his silver instrument, which had begun to emit a high-pitched whine of its own. "Impossible," he breathed. "What is it?" Fudge demanded anxiously. "The emotional energy," Bode explained, his voice hushed with amazement. "It's reversed. Instead of the Dementors drawing positive emotions from her, she's somehow pushing something back at them. Something they can't process." Wednesday considered this. Luna Lovegood suggested my soul signature might be fundamentally incompatible with their feeding patterns. Perhaps actively harmful to them. "Soul signature," Bode repeated slowly. "Yes, that's a surprisingly apt description. The Dementors feed on specific emotional wavelengths. If yours are fundamentally different, alien to their experience." He trailed off, lost in thought. Wednesday decided to test the limits of this effect. She took another step forward and deliberately concentrated on one of her happiest memories, helping Uncle Fester wire himself to the electric chair during her 10th birthday celebration. The family applause as he lit up like a grotesque Christmas tree, his delighted screams of pain, the smell of burning hair, a truly joyful Addams moment. The effect on the Dementors was dramatic. All 3 creatures recoiled violently, their forms seeming to blur at the edges. The nearest one actually appeared to be smoking slightly, wisps of black vapor rising from its tattered cloak. "She's hurting them," Snape realized, his voice caught between shock and admiration. "Actively damaging them somehow." "Enough!" Fudge cried, his face ashen. "This has gone too far. Bode, end this at once." Bode seemed reluctant to halt the experiment but raised his wand nevertheless. With a complex motion, he opened a section of the barrier. The Dementors fled immediately, shooting into the sky like bullets from a gun, disappearing into the clouds above. "Remarkable," Dumbledore murmured as Wednesday calmly walked back to join them. "Truly remarkable. Did you do something specific to cause that final reaction?" Bode asked eagerly, stepping forward to meet her. "I focused on a particularly happy memory," Wednesday explained. "One involving family celebration, electrical torture, and third-degree burns. A cherished childhood moment." The adults exchanged disturbed glances, but Bode merely nodded, scribbling more notes. "A happy memory that would register as trauma to most individuals. Yes, that aligns with my developing theory. Your emotional responses are fundamentally inverted compared to standard human patterns. My family has always had a unique perspective on joy and suffering, Wednesday acknowledged. Miss Addams, Bode said, suddenly intense, would you be willing to participate in further research at the Department of Mysteries? With your parents' permission, of course, he added with a glance at Dumbledore. Your ability could revolutionize our understanding of Dementor physiology and potentially lead to new defensive measures. Before Wednesday could respond, Dumbledore interjected gently but firmly. I believe Miss Addams's primary concern at present is returning to her own dimension, Broderick. Perhaps any additional research might be conducted here at Hogwarts, where she is currently residing. Bode's expression flickered with something, disappointment. Frustration. Before smoothing into professional detachment. Of course, Headmaster. Though the department's resources would be invaluable for both purposes. We have considerable experience with interdimensional anomalies. Wednesday's interest sharpened. You've encountered other dimensional travelers. The Department of Mysteries studies many phenomena beyond standard magical understanding, Bode replied carefully. Including barriers between realities. Your situation is unique but not without precedent. This was the most promising lead she'd encountered since arriving. I would be interested in consulting your records on dimensional travel, Wednesday said. My own research has reached limitations due to restricted access to relevant materials. I'm sure something can be arranged, Bode said smoothly. With proper authorization, of course. Fudge, who had been watching this exchange with growing impatience, finally interjected. Yes, interdimensional whatever, the immediate concern is the Dementors. Bode, what are the implications of this immunity? Could it be taught? Replicated? Unlikely, Minister, Bode replied. Miss Addams's effect appears to be intrinsic to her nature, not a learned skill. Though further research might yield protective measures based on similar principles. The practical applications are intriguing, Wednesday noted. In my dimension, we've developed methods to repel various supernatural entities. Cross-dimensional adaptation of these techniques might be possible. Bode's eyes lit with renewed interest. You have expertise in supernatural containment. Most fascinating. Perhaps, I think that's quite enough for today, Dumbledore interrupted firmly. Miss Addams should return to her studies, and I'm sure the minister has other pressing matters requiring his attention. Fudge seized the opportunity. Quite right, Dumbledore. Must get back to the ministry. Pressing business, very pressing indeed. He turned to Wednesday with an awkward attempt at avuncular warmth. Most impressive, young lady. Most impressive indeed. England thanks you for your cooperation. With that, he hurried away, still clutching his lime-green bowler hat. Bode lingered, his gaze fixed on Wednesday with uncomfortable intensity. I'll be in touch regarding those department records, he said quietly. Your situation presents unique research opportunities, for both of us. He bowed slightly to Dumbledore, nodded to Snape, and followed Fudge back toward the castle. As soon as they were out of earshot, Snape turned to Dumbledore, his expression concerned. I don't trust Bode's interest in the girl, Headmaster. Unspeakables rarely share their true motives. Indeed, Severus, Dumbledore agreed, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Most concerning. Miss Addams, I would advise caution in any further interactions with Mr. Bode. While the Department of Mysteries may indeed possess information that could help you return home, their methods can be unorthodox. Wednesday appreciated the warning, though she'd already reached similar conclusions. Bode's scientific interest seemed genuine, but there was something predatory in his focus, something that reminded her of her cousin Ophelia when she discovered a particularly interesting species of poisonous spider. I'll exercise appropriate caution, she assured them. His emotional patterns displayed several concerning anomalies during our interaction. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. You detected this? I've studied microexpressions and autonomic responses as indicators of deception, Wednesday explained. A necessary skill when one's brother regularly attempts to poison one's breakfast. This statement earned her another of those concerned adult looks, but Wednesday was accustomed to such reactions. The trio walked back toward the castle in thoughtful silence, each processing the morning's revelations in their own way. As they reached the entrance hall, Dumbledore turned to Wednesday. "I believe you have potions next, Miss Addams. Professor Snape will escort you. I must speak with the minister before he departs." With a swirl of purple robes, the headmaster strode away, leaving Wednesday alone with Snape. They walked toward the dungeons in silence for several minutes before the potions master spoke. "Your effect on the Dementors is unprecedented," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Such power over dark creatures is rare." "Power implies deliberate control," Wednesday corrected. "My effect appears to be passive, a natural consequence of interdimensional displacement rather than applied skill." "Perhaps," Snape conceded. "But passive or not, it represents a significant advantage. One that others will seek to exploit." Wednesday glanced at him. "You're warning me against Bode specifically, or the Ministry generally?" A flicker of surprise crossed Snape's face, quickly masked. "Both. The Ministry fears what it doesn't understand, and unspeakables view unusual magical phenomena as research subjects rather than people." "A rational assessment," Wednesday acknowledged. "Though their resources may be necessary for my return journey." Snape's dark eyes studied her for a moment. "There are always alternative methods for those willing to explore, unconventional approaches." The statement hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Was Snape offering assistance? Or merely making an observation? His expression revealed nothing. "I appreciate the insight, Professor," Wednesday said finally. "Alternative methodologies often yield superior results in experimental contexts." Snape nodded once, seemingly satisfied with this exchange of ambiguous statements. They had reached the potions classroom, where students were already filing in. After class, Snape said quietly, "You may wish to examine the cabinet in the far corner of my private storeroom. The green volume on dimensional theory might prove illuminating." With that cryptic remark, he swept into the classroom, robes billowing dramatically behind him. Wednesday followed, intrigued by this unexpected development. Snape was offering access to restricted knowledge, a significant gesture from the normally guarded professor. The potions lesson proceeded normally, with Snape berating Gryffindors and favoring Slytherins as usual. The only deviation from routine was his instruction for Wednesday to remain after class to assist with ingredient preparation, an obvious pretext for accessing his private storeroom. When the other students had gone, Wednesday followed Snape through a narrow door at the back of the classroom into a small, meticulously organized room lined with shelves of ingredients and books. Without a word, he pointed to a cabinet in the corner, then returned to the classroom, presumably to provide plausible deniability. Wednesday approached the cabinet and found it unlocked. Inside, just as Snape had indicated, was a slender green volume titled Dimensional Fractures, Theory and Practice. She removed it carefully, noting its apparent age and the strange material of its binding, something that resembled leather but felt oddly metallic to the touch. A quick examination revealed dense text in an archaic form of English, interspersed with diagrams of elaborate ritual circles and astronomical charts. More significantly, several pages were marked with thin strips of parchment, highlighting specific passages. One such marked section caught her attention immediately. The Veil of Passing, housed within the Department of Mysteries, represents not merely a barrier between life and death as commonly supposed, but rather a permanent fracture between dimensional planes. Those who pass through do not simply die, they are translocated to parallel realities corresponding to their soul's resonant frequency. This aligned with Wednesday's research in the restricted section but provided crucial new information. If the veil was indeed a dimensional portal rather than simply a death gate, it might offer her way home, but only if she could attune it to her specific dimensional frequency. Another marked passage described a ritual for establishing dimensional coordinates, To locate one's home dimension among the infinite possibilities, one requires an anchor, an object or entity with a strong connection to both the traveler and their origin point. Through proper application of astronomical alignment, sacrificial offering, and runic invocation, a temporary bridge may be established, allowing for communication or, in rare cases, physical transference. Wednesday considered this an anchor. Something connected to both her and her home dimension. She had brought nothing physical with her during the accidental transport, but perhaps something less tangible might suffice. Blood contained genetic material, which was identical across dimensions. The Addams family bloodline was distinctive and powerful. Maybe that could serve as her anchor. The final marked section was the most intriguing: beings whose natural state transcends conventional dimensional boundaries, phoenixes, certain species of unspeakable demons, and theorized entities such as dimension weavers, may traverse the barriers without the elaborate preparations required by mortals. Their innate resonance allows them to slide between realities, though not without significant energy expenditure. Phoenixes. This confirmed her earlier hypothesis about Dumbledore's phoenix potentially helping with interdimensional travel. And unspeakable demons, was that a reference to literal demons used by the department, or a colorful description of the unspeakables themselves? Wednesday carefully copied the most relevant information into her black notebook, then returned the green volume to its place in the cabinet. The book had provided valuable theoretical framework, but practical application would require additional resources, and possibly assistance from someone with access to either the veil or a phoenix. When she emerged from the storeroom, Snape was grading papers, his expression revealing nothing. "I trust you found the ingredients adequately preserved, Miss Addams." "Yes, Professor," Wednesday replied, understanding the need for discretion. "Your organizational system is most efficient." Snape nodded once, dismissing her without further comment. As Wednesday left the dungeons, her mind worked rapidly, processing the new information and formulating potential approaches. The Department of Mysteries route seemed most promising but carried significant risks, especially given Bode's unsettling interest in her. She was so absorbed in these thoughts that she nearly collided with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who were clearly waiting for her in the corridor. "Wednesday!" Hermione exclaimed. "We've been looking everywhere for you. Harry told us you wanted to meet by the lake." Wednesday checked the time. Classes had indeed ended for the day, and she was now late for her planned meeting with the trio to discuss Sirius Black. "My apologies for the delay," she said. "I was assisting Professor Snape with ingredient cataloging." Ron made a face. "Voluntarily? You really are from another dimension." "Let's get going," Harry urged, glancing around nervously. "The lake should be quiet this time of day." The four made their way outside and down to a secluded spot on the shore of the Black Lake. The giant squid was visible in the distance, its tentacles lazily breaking the surface as it basked in the late afternoon sun. Once they were seated on a cluster of rocks away from potential eavesdroppers, Harry turned to Wednesday expectantly. "So what's this about Sirius Black?" Wednesday considered how best to present the information. Direct factual delivery seemed most efficient. "Sirius Black is innocent of the crimes for which he was imprisoned. He was framed by Peter Pettigrew, who faked his own death and has been living as Ron's rat for the past 12 years. The response was immediate and chaotic. Ron leapt to his feet, face pale. "What? Scabbers? That's mental." Harry stared at Wednesday in shock while Hermione looked thoughtful rather than dismissive, a credit to her analytical mind. "How do you know this?" Harry demanded. "And why should we believe you?" "I encountered Black in the castle 2 nights ago," Wednesday explained calmly. "He was injured and seeking medical attention. I provided it, during which time he explained his situation. His account contained internal consistency and logical coherence suggestive of truthfulness." "You helped Sirius Black?" Ron squeaked. "The mass murderer." "The falsely accused," Wednesday corrected. Logical analysis of the evidence suggests his version of events is more plausible than the official narrative. Consider, if Black was indeed a devoted follower of Voldemort, why wait 12 years to attack Harry? Why escape only after seeing a newspaper photo of the Weasley family with Pettigrew in rat form? Hermione's eyes widened. The newspaper. Mr. Weasley was in the Daily Prophet last summer after winning the Ministry lottery. Ron was in the photo, with Scabbers on his shoulder. Precisely, Wednesday confirmed. Black recognized Pettigrew's animagus form immediately, having been friends with him at school. The timing of his escape correlates directly with that publication. Harry, who had been silent, processing this information, finally spoke. So you're saying Pettigrew betrayed my parents, framed Sirius, then cut off his own finger and transformed into a rat to escape? Correct, Wednesday nodded. Pettigrew was the actual secret keeper for your parents' location, not Black as widely believed. A last-minute change that proved fatal. Ron was shaking his head vehemently. No way. Scabbers is just a normal rat. He's been in my family for 12 years, Hermione interrupted quietly. Ron, normal rats don't live nearly that long. A heavy silence fell over the group as they grappled with these revelations. Harry's expression shifted from shock to anger to a calculating determination. I want to meet him, he said finally. Sirius. I want to hear this directly from him. He anticipated that request, Wednesday replied. He's willing to meet you tonight, in the Shrieking Shack. There's apparently a secret passage from Hogwarts grounds. The Whomping Willow Passage, Harry said, surprising Wednesday with his knowledge. We know about it. Harry, Hermione cautioned, if Wednesday's right, this changes everything. But we need to be careful. This could still be a trap. It's not, Harry said with sudden certainty. It makes sense, Hermione. Why would Sirius go after Ron's bed in the dormitory instead of mine if he was trying to kill me? He was after Scabbers. Ron had turned slightly green. I've been sleeping with a grown man for 3 years. That's disgusting. Your discomfort is understandable but irrelevant to the immediate situation, Wednesday pointed out practically. The priority is capturing Pettigrew and establishing Black's innocence. She's right, Harry agreed, standing up decisively. We need to get Scabbers. Where is he now, Ron? Ron frowned. In my dormitory, I think. He's been hiding a lot lately, ever since Crookshanks started hunting him. Crookshanks, Hermione gasped. My cat has been trying to catch Scabbers all year. He must have somehow known Scabbers wasn't a real rat. Felines often demonstrate superior sensory perception regarding supernatural or transformed entities, Wednesday noted. My family's cat, Kitty Cat, routinely identifies possessed individuals before they begin exhibiting symptoms. This comment earned her strange looks from all three, but they quickly refocused on the urgent matter at hand. We need a plan, Harry said. We'll get Scabbers, meet Sirius at the Shrieking Shack, and force Pettigrew to show himself. And then what? Hermione asked practically. Even if we learn the truth, how do we prove it to everyone else? Professor Lupin might help, Wednesday suggested. He was friends with both Black and Pettigrew at school. His testimony would add credibility. Harry nodded. Good idea. But we should talk to Sirius first, get the whole story before involving anyone else. They spent the next half hour developing their plan. Ron would retrieve Scabbers, securing him in a spell-reinforced container that Hermione would prepare. They would meet Wednesday outside the castle at midnight, then proceed to the Whomping Willow Passage together. As they finalized the details, a chill wind suddenly swept across the lake. The surface water frosted over in an expanding circle, spreading from the far shore toward them with unnatural speed. Dementors, Harry whispered, his face paling as he reached for his wand. But Wednesday had already stood, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching figures gliding over the frozen lake surface. There were more than she'd seen previously, at least 10, moving in formation directly toward their position. "Stay behind me," she instructed calmly. "They're unlikely to approach while I'm present." Sure enough, the Dementors slowed as they drew closer, maintaining a distance of approximately 50 yards. They hovered there, seemingly observing, their tattered robes barely moving despite the increasing wind. "What are they doing?" Ron hissed, visibly shivering. "Why aren't they leaving like before?" "They appear to be observing rather than retreating," Wednesday noted with clinical interest. "Adapting their behavior based on previous encounters." "Fascinating." Harry had his wand raised, clearly preparing to attempt his Patronus if necessary, but the Dementors made no move to come closer. After several tense minutes, they began to drift away, returning to their patrol pattern around the castle grounds. "That was weird," Ron said once they'd disappeared. "It's like they were studying you." "They're learning," Wednesday agreed. "Adjusting their responses to an anomaly in their environment. Complex adaptive behavior suggesting higher intelligence than commonly attributed to them." Hermione looked troubled. "If they're intelligent enough to learn and adapt, and they communicate with the Ministry, then our plan tonight carries additional risk," Wednesday finished for her. "The Dementors may report unusual activity to their handlers. We'll have to be extra careful," Harry decided. "Use the invisibility cloak, move quickly." With renewed urgency, they finalized their plan and separated, agreeing to meet at the designated time. Wednesday returned to her quarters to prepare for the evening's activities, her mind cataloging potential complications and contingencies. She had just finished organizing a small kit of useful items: wound paste, lockpicks, a vial of concentrated night vision potion borrowed from Snape's storeroom, when a soft knock sounded at her door. Wednesday opened it to find Luna Lovegood standing there, her expression even dreamier than usual. "Hello, Wednesday," Luna said serenely. "I thought you should know that the Nargles are clustering around the Whomping Willow tonight. It usually means something important is about to happen there." Wednesday had long since stopped questioning Luna's unusual perceptions. The girl might express her observations in non-standard terminology, but the underlying insights often proved accurate. "Thank you for the information," Wednesday replied. "Is there anything specific about these Nargle formations that might indicate danger?" Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. "They're forming spiral patterns instead of their usual clusters. That usually means opposing forces converging. And there's an unusual darkness among them, not physical darkness, but a sort of emptiness that shouldn't be there." Wednesday considered this. Translated from Luna's unique perspective, it suggested conflicting parties meeting at the Willow, along with something unnatural or void-like. Dementors, perhaps. Or something else. "Your warning is appreciated," Wednesday said. "Would you care to accompany me this evening? Your perceptual abilities might prove valuable." Luna smiled dreamily. "I'd be delighted. I've never been to a confrontation between a wrongly accused godfather and a ratman before. It sounds quite exciting." Wednesday didn't bother asking how Luna knew their plans. The girl had an uncanny way of perceiving things others missed. "Meet me here at 11:30, Wednesday instructed. "Wear dark clothing if possible, and bring anything you consider useful for detecting unusual magical energies." "I'll bring my spectrospecs," Luna agreed happily. "They're excellent for seeing things others miss. And some dirigible plum earrings, they enhance wisdom in tense situations." After Luna departed, Wednesday returned to her preparations. The evening's events would likely prove pivotal, not only for Black and Potter, but potentially for her own situation as well. If Black were exonerated, he might provide additional assistance with her dimensional displacement problem. And if Lupin became involved, his knowledge of dark creatures might offer new insights into the Dementor's strange behavior toward her. As dusk fell and the castle quieted, Wednesday felt none of the anxiety that might have afflicted others before such a potentially dangerous undertaking. Instead, she experienced the calm focus that always accompanied her most interesting scientific endeavors. After all, interdimensional displacement, wrongly accused prisoners, and rat animagi were just another Wednesday in the life of an Addams. At precisely 11:30, Wednesday opened her door to find Luna waiting, dressed in a dark blue outfit that, while not exactly stealthy, was at least less conspicuous than her usual attire. True to her word, she wore orange radish-like earrings and peculiar multicolored spectacles that made her eyes appear enormous. "The Nargles are getting very excited," Luna whispered as they made their way through the silent corridors. "They're swarming all over the castle now." Wednesday accepted this information without comment, focusing on navigating to their rendezvous point without encountering staff or prefects. They reached the entrance hall without incident and slipped outside into the cool night air. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were already waiting, huddled together under what appeared to be an invisibility cloak, though their feet were visible beneath it. They emerged fully when they spotted Wednesday and Luna approaching. "You brought Lovegood?" Ron whispered incredulously. "Luna possesses unique perceptual abilities that may prove advantageous," Wednesday explained simply. "Did you secure Pettigrew?" Ron held up a small cage in which a fat gray rat was thrashing frantically, squeaking in obvious distress. "Scabbers has been going mental ever since we put him in here. Keeps trying to escape." Consciousness of guilt, Hermione observed grimly. "He knows we're on to him." "He's terrified," Luna added, studying the rat through her strange spectacles. "His aura is pulsating with fear and desperation. And something else, a darkness that doesn't belong in a rat." Harry looked at Luna curiously but didn't question her presence further. "We should get moving. I brought the Marauder's map to make sure the coast is clear." He showed Wednesday a seemingly ordinary piece of parchment that, after a whispered phrase, revealed itself to be a detailed magical map of Hogwarts, showing the location of every person within the castle. Wednesday examined it with scientific interest, appreciating the complex charm work involved in its creation. "A most efficient surveillance tool," she commented. "Similar in principle to my family's sentient house, which alerts us to visitors by moaning their names." Once again, her casual reference to Addams' family oddities earned her bewildered looks, but the group quickly refocused on their mission. The map showed no teachers or prefects patrolling near their planned route, so they set off across the grounds toward the Whomping Willow. As they approached the violent tree, its branches began to sway menacingly, sensing their presence. Ron handed Scabbers' cage to Hermione and picked up a long stick from the ground. "There's a knot at the base of the trunk," he explained. "If you press it, the tree freezes." With practiced aim, he poked the stick at a particular spot near the tree's roots. Immediately, the willow's thrashing branches stilled, as if the tree had been suddenly petrified. "Fascinating," Wednesday murmured. "A biological kill switch engineered into an otherwise defensive organism. Your wizarding world has interesting approaches to bioethics." Ron gave her an odd look. "It's just a charm, I think." "Let's go," Harry urged, already climbing into a gap between the roots that revealed a hidden tunnel. "Sirius is waiting." One by one, they entered the passage, Harry first, followed by Ron, Hermione with the caged Scabbers, Wednesday, and finally Luna. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing them to crouch as they moved forward in single file. Roots dangled from the ceiling, occasionally catching in their hair or clothing. After what seemed like a considerable distance, the passage began to slope upward. Eventually, it ended at a small opening. Harry climbed through first, then helped the others emerge into what was clearly an abandoned building, the infamous Shrieking Shack. The room they found themselves in was dusty and decrepit. Furniture lay broken and scattered, deep gouges marked the walls, and the windows were boarded up, allowing only thin strips of moonlight to penetrate the gloom. "Upstairs," Harry whispered, pointing to a faint light visible at the top of a dilapidated staircase. "Someone's here." They climbed the stairs cautiously, the ancient wood creaking beneath their weight despite their attempts at silence. At the top landing, a door stood ajar, warm light spilling onto the dusty floorboards. Harry pushed the door open fully, wand raised defensively. Inside was a once grand bedroom, now fallen into decay like the rest of the building. Sitting on the edge of a four-poster bed with torn hangings was Sirius Black, looking marginally better than when Wednesday had treated his injury. He still appeared gaunt and haggard, but his eyes were clear and focused as they fell on Harry. "Harry," Sirius breathed, rising slowly to his feet. "You look so like your father." For a moment, no one moved. Then Harry stepped forward, his wand still raised but his expression uncertain. "Wednesday told us your story. About Pettigrew. Is it true?" "Every word," Sirius confirmed, his gaze shifting to the cage in Hermione's hands. "You brought him. Good." Ron clutched the cage closer to his chest, still not entirely convinced. "Prove it. Prove Scabbers is Pettigrew." "Of course," Sirius agreed. He reached slowly into his ragged robes and withdrew a wand, not his own, Wednesday noted, but likely one he had acquired through less than legal means. "The spell is simple enough. If he's a real rat, nothing will happen. If he's an animagus in disguise, he'll be forced back into human form." Hermione placed the cage on a dusty table, stepping back warily. Inside, Scabbers was now throwing himself against the bars in desperate panic, squealing loudly. "Wait," Harry said suddenly. "I think Professor Lupin should be here for this. He knew both of you at school. His testimony would help prove your story to others." Sirius hesitated, clearly eager to expose Pettigrew immediately, but nodded reluctantly. "You're right. Remus would help make this more credible. But how do we get him here?" "I could go back to the castle and bring him," Hermione volunteered. "I'm the fastest runner." "No need," came a voice from the doorway. They all whirled to see Professor Lupin standing there, wand drawn, expression unreadable. "I'm already here." "Remus!" Sirius exclaimed, his face lighting up with hope. Lupin stepped into the room, his gaze moving from Sirius to the caged rat, which was now frozen in terror. "I saw you all heading to the Willow on the Marauders map. I thought I should investigate." "You have the map too?" Ron asked, confused. "He helped create it," Wednesday stated matter-of-factly. "Along with Sirius Black, James Potter, and presumably Peter Pettigrew. The evidence suggests they called themselves the Marauders during their school years." Lupin looked at her with surprise. "You've deduced quite a lot, Miss Addams." "Logical inference from available data," Wednesday replied with a slight shrug. Lupin turned his attention back to the rat. "Is that him, Sirius? Is that Peter?" "Yes," Sirius confirmed, a growl entering his voice. "He's missing a toe on his front paw, the same finger he cut off before blowing up the street and framing me." Lupin's expression hardened. "Show me." Hermione carefully opened the cage and, using a levitation charm, lifted the frantically struggling rat into the air. Lupin and Sirius both pointed their wands at the suspended rodent. "Together?" Lupin asked. Sirius nodded grimly. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Twin flashes of blue-white light erupted from their wands, striking the rat simultaneously. For a moment, Scabbers hung in midair, contorting unnaturally. Then he began to grow and transform, limbs extending, body swelling, until a short, balding man with pointed features crashed to the floor where the rat had been. "Hello, Peter," Lupin said coldly. Pettigrew's watery eyes darted around the room in panic, taking in the assembled group. "Remus. Sirius. My old friends." "Save it," Sirius snarled, his wand trained unwaveringly on Pettigrew's heart. "We know what you did. You betrayed James and Lily to Voldemort." Pettigrew flinched at the name, then turned to Harry with a desperate, pleading expression. "Harry. Sweet boy. You look just like your father. James wouldn't have wanted me killed, Harry. James would have shown mercy." "Don't you dare speak to him," Sirius growled, taking a menacing step forward. "Don't you dare invoke James's name after what you did." Wednesday observed the confrontation with clinical detachment, noting the psychological dynamics at play. Pettigrew exhibited classic cornered rat behavior, desperate, searching for any escape route, willing to debase himself completely for survival. Sirius displayed predatory aggression tempered by years of focused hatred. Lupin maintained a calm exterior that barely concealed cold fury. Harry, however, was the most interesting to watch. His expression shifted between shock, disgust, and a growing, hardening resolve. "Why did you do it?" Harry asked finally, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Why betray my parents?" Pettigrew cowered, his hands wringing nervously. "You don't understand. The Dark Lord, you have no idea the weapons he possesses." "What would you have done?" "Died," Sirius spat. "Died rather than betray my friends, as we would have done for you." Luna, who had been silently watching from near the door, suddenly spoke in her dreamy voice. "He's surrounded by Raxperts. More than I've ever seen. They're drawn to deceptive minds, you know." Pettigrew stared at her in confusion, but Wednesday understood Luna's meaning perfectly. "She means you're still lying, Pettigrew. Even now, facing exposure, you're calculating, looking for advantage." "And no. I'm not, your micromovements suggest otherwise," Wednesday continued dispassionately. "Rapid eye darting indicates search for escape routes. Specific finger twitching suggests preparation to either grab a wand or transform again. Perspiration patterns are consistent with duplicitous intent rather than mere fear." Lupin looked at Wednesday with newfound respect. "Impressive analysis, Miss Addams." "Observation is a fundamental scientific skill," she replied simply. Pettigrew, realizing his psychological manipulations were failing, suddenly lunged toward the door. Faster than anyone could react, he transformed mid-leap back into a rat and scurried toward a hole in the baseboard. "No!" Sirius shouted, firing a spell that missed by inches. But before Pettigrew could reach safety, a small, spectral creature resembling a deformed rabbit materialized directly in his path. The rat skidded to a halt, squeaking in terror. "Oh, thank you," Luna said pleasantly to the empty air. "That's very helpful." While Pettigrew was distracted by whatever only Luna could see, Lupin's spell hit him squarely, forcing him back into human form. Sirius immediately followed with an incarceration spell, binding Pettigrew with thick ropes. "What was that?" Ron asked, staring at the space where the spectral creature had apparently been. "A blibbering humdinger," Luna explained, as if it were obvious. "They're attracted to moments of justice being served. Very rare to see one this far south." Wednesday made a mental note to discuss Luna's unique perceptions in more detail later. The girl clearly possessed extrasensory capabilities that, while expressed in unconventional terminology, demonstrated real efficacy. "What now?" Hermione asked practically. "We need to get Pettigrew to the authorities somehow." "Dumbledore," Harry decided. "We take him to Dumbledore first. Then the Ministry." Sirius nodded in agreement. "Albus will ensure I get a fair hearing this time." They secured Pettigrew more thoroughly, Lupin adding several charms to prevent him from transforming again. As they prepared to leave, Sirius pulled Harry aside for a private conversation. Wednesday couldn't hear their words, but the emotional significance was clear, godfather and godson beginning to form a connection that had been denied them for 12 years. Their return journey through the tunnel was more complicated with a bound prisoner, but they managed it without major incident. As they emerged from beneath the whomping willow into the cool night air, Luna suddenly stopped, her dreamy expression replaced by uncharacteristic urgency. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "The air feels empty. Too empty." Wednesday immediately understood. Dementors. No sooner had she spoken than the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the ground with unnatural speed, and dark shapes began to materialize from the direction of the forest. "They're coming from all directions," Harry warned, drawing his wand. "Dozens of them." Indeed, Dementors were converging on their position from every side, forming a tightening circle around the group. Unlike previous encounters, they showed no hesitation in approaching despite Wednesday's presence. "Something's different," Wednesday observed, studying their movement patterns. "They're not retreating from me as before. They've been ordered to attack," Lupin realized grimly. "Someone knows we have Sirius and has commanded them to administer the kiss." The Dementors drew closer, their rattling breath audible now. Harry and Lupin both raised their wands, attempting to cast Patronus charms, but their silver guardian seemed weak and insubstantial against so many Dementors. Wednesday stepped forward, placing herself between the advancing Dementors and the others. As before, she focused on her happiest memory, Uncle Fester's electric chair performance, and projected it outward with deliberate intensity. Several of the nearest Dementors recoiled, emitting high-pitched keening noises. But unlike previous encounters, they didn't flee. After a moment's hesitation, they continued their advance, though more cautiously. "They're fighting their fear of you," Hermione gasped, her face pale as she struggled against the Dementors' influence. "Something's compelling them to attack despite their instincts." Wednesday narrowed her eyes, concentrating harder. She drew on deeper, more powerful Addams memories, her mother's loving bedtime stories about torture and plague, her father's joyful fencing lessons that frequently ended in actual bloodshed, the family's enthusiastic celebration when Pugsley survived his first lethal poisoning. The effect was stronger this time. The nearest Dementors writhed in apparent agony, their forms blurring at the edges as if they were struggling to maintain cohesion. Several broke formation, retreating to the periphery of the circle. But still, they did not all flee as they had before. "It's not enough," Sirius gasped, struggling to remain upright as the Dementors' influence weakened him. "There are too many." Something was interfering with Wednesday's usual effect on the creatures. She scanned the perimeter and noticed a tall figure standing at the edge of the forest, partially concealed in shadow. Even at this distance, she recognized the distinctive silhouette of Broderick Bode, the unspeakable. He was holding a strange, silver device in one hand and what appeared to be a small, writhing black mass in the other. As Wednesday watched, he seemed to be manipulating both objects in complex patterns, his lips moving in what might have been an incantation. "The unspeakable is controlling them somehow," Wednesday informed the others. "Using some form of Dementor essence as a focus." "That's impossible," Lupin protested weakly. "No one can control Dementors like that." "Evidently, someone can," Wednesday replied calmly. "And is currently doing so." The Dementors continued to close in despite Wednesday's presence. Harry managed to produce a stronger Patronus that drove back several on one side, but the effort clearly drained him considerably. Lupin's Patronus was similarly limited in effect. Wednesday made a rapid calculation. Direct confrontation with so many Dementors while they were under external control was unlikely to succeed. The logical alternative was to neutralize the controller. "Luna," she said quietly. "Can you see what Bode is holding?" "The black substance." Luna squinted through her unusual spectacles. "It looks like a piece of Dementor. Not physical, more like a fragment of emptiness. He's using it to call to the others. Like a whistle only they can hear." "As I suspected," Wednesday nodded. "Hermione, I need the strongest light-producing spell you know. Directed at the tree line, approximately 40 degrees east of our position." Hermione, though clearly struggling with the Dementor's proximity, managed to raise her wand. "Lumos Maxima Tot Alum," she cried. A brilliant burst of light erupted from her wand, illuminating the entire area in harsh white radiance. Bode was caught fully in the beam, momentarily blinded. He staggered back, his concentration broken, the silver device slipping from his grasp. The effect on the Dementors was immediate and dramatic. Without Bode's controlling influence, they reverted to their instinctive response to Wednesday's presence. Those closest to her fled immediately, shooting upward into the night sky or retreating into the forest. The others hesitated, caught between their fear of Wednesday and some lingering effect of Bode's control. "Now's our chance," Sirius urged. "We need to get to the castle." "Wait," Wednesday said, her eyes still on Bode. He's attempting to re-establish control. Indeed, the unspeakable had recovered his device and was manipulating it frantically, trying to regain command of the Dementors. Some of the creatures seemed to respond, hesitating in their retreat. Wednesday made a quick decision. Harry, your invisibility cloak. May I borrow it? Harry handed it over without question, understanding lighting his eyes. You're going after him. Correct. His device and methods require investigation. And he represents a threat to our current objective. Before anyone could protest, Wednesday had slipped the cloak over herself and was moving swiftly toward Bode's position, leaving the others to guard Pettigrew. The Dementors' confusion provided excellent cover, their erratic movements and the general chaos made her invisible approach even more undetectable. Bode was fully focused on his device, unaware of Wednesday's approach. Up close, she could see the black substance in his hand more clearly, a swirling, smoking essence that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Not quite liquid, not quite gas, it writhed in his palm like a living thing. Without hesitation, Wednesday reached out from beneath the invisibility cloak and seized Bode's wrist in a precise grip that applied pressure to specific nerve points. The unspeakable let out a startled cry as his hand spasmed involuntarily, releasing both the device and the black essence. The silver instrument clattered to the ground, but the black essence hung in the air momentarily before shooting toward Wednesday like a magnet drawn to metal. It struck her squarely in the chest, seeming to pass through the invisibility cloak as if it weren't there. For a brief, disorienting moment, Wednesday felt a cold emptiness spreading through her. But unlike the fear and despair others reported from Dementor contact, this sensation was oddly familiar, reminiscent of the comfortable void she sometimes experienced during Grandmama's particularly potent nightshade tea ceremonies. The essence didn't remain within her, however. After a momentary connection, it erupted outward again, now glowing with an eerie purple light. It hovered between Wednesday and Bode, pulsating rhythmically. Impossible, Bode whispered, staring at the transformed essence with a mixture of fear and scientific fascination. You absorbed it and changed it somehow. Your understanding of Dementor physiology is clearly incomplete, Wednesday remarked, removing the invisibility cloak now that stealth was no longer necessary. This substance resonates differently after contact with my soul signature, as Luna Lovegood aptly described it. Bode's expression shifted from shock to calculating interest. You're even more unique than I realized, Miss Addams. The department would be most interested in studying this interaction further. Your current research methods appear to involve endangering schoolchildren and manipulating dangerous entities for personal gain, Wednesday observed. An inefficient and ethically questionable approach to scientific advancement. Before Bode could respond, the black essence, still glowing with purple light, began to move with apparent purpose. It drifted upward, gaining speed, then shot into the night sky. The remaining Dementors immediately followed, drawn to it like moths to a flame, abandoning their attack completely. Wednesday took advantage of Bode's distraction to retrieve his fallen device. It was more complex than she had initially assumed, a series of interlocking silver rings inscribed with runes, surrounding what appeared to be a miniature hourglass filled with the same black substance he had been holding. That's department property, Bode said sharply, reaching for it. And currently evidence in an attempted murder investigation, Wednesday countered, stepping back. Your unauthorized control of Dementors nearly resulted in multiple casualties, including a potentially innocent man who deserves a fair trial. Bode's face hardened. You don't understand what you're interfering with, girl. That device is beyond your comprehension. It's a Dementor control matrix, Wednesday replied calmly. The runic configuration suggests it operates on principles of sympathetic magic, using a sample of Dementor essence to influence others of their kind. The hourglass element likely modulates the temporal aspects of the command cycle, allowing for sustained control rather than momentary influence. Bode stared at her, clearly taken aback by her accurate assessment. Furthermore, Wednesday continued, the unauthorized removal of Dementor essence from the Department of Mysteries constitutes a violation of Code 16 of the Unspeakable Oath, as referenced in the restricted text I reviewed in Professor Snape's collection. This was a calculated bluff based on limited information, but Bode's reaction, a slight widening of the eyes, a momentary tension in his jaw, confirmed its accuracy. "You're in over your head, Miss Addams," he said quietly. "There are forces at work here beyond your understanding." "On the contrary," Wednesday replied. "I understand perfectly. You've been experimenting with Dementor essence, likely without official sanction. My unique effect on Dementors represents both an opportunity and a threat to your research. Tonight was an attempt to neutralize me while simultaneously recapturing Sirius Black to prevent any disruption to your plans." Bode's expression confirmed her deductions. With surprising speed, he drew his wand and aimed it directly at her. "I can't allow you to interfere further. Obliviate." Wednesday had anticipated this move. She dropped to the ground, the memory charm sailing over her head and striking a tree behind her, causing it to instantly shed all its leaves as if suddenly suffering amnesia about how to be a tree. Before Bode could cast again, a barrage of spells from the direction of the Whomping Willow struck the ground around him. Lupin, Sirius, and Hermione had noticed the confrontation and were racing to Wednesday's aid, wands drawn. Bode assessed the situation quickly and made the logical choice. With a swirl of his cloak, he disapparated with a loud crack, leaving Wednesday holding his Dementor control matrix. "Are you all right?" Hermione gasped as she reached Wednesday's side. "Perfectly functional," Wednesday assured her, pocketing the device. "Though I've had a most interesting encounter with Dementor essence." "We saw," Lupin confirmed, looking both concerned and fascinated. "It seemed to bond with you briefly, then transform." "A catalytic reaction," Wednesday theorized. "My soul signature appears to alter the fundamental properties of Dementor essence, converting it from a fear-inducing substance to something else entirely." The Dementors followed it, Sirius noted, glancing at the now empty sky. "All of them. Like they were being summoned. Or fleeing from what it became," Wednesday suggested. "Further research is required for definitive conclusions." "Research can wait," Harry called from where he stood guarding the still-bound Pettigrew. "We need to get to Dumbledore before anything else happens." They hurried across the grounds toward the castle, dragging the reluctant Pettigrew with them. The night's events had taken an unexpected turn, but the primary objective remained unchanged, clearing Sirius's name and ensuring justice was served. As they approached the castle entrance, however, another figure emerged from the shadows. Professor Snape stood waiting, his wand illuminated, his expression unreadable as usual. "I might have known," he said softly, his gaze moving from Lupin to Sirius with undisguised loathing. "Consorting with a werewolf and a mass murderer, Potter. Even for you, this is extraordinarily foolish." "Professor," Hermione began urgently, "you don't understand." "I understand perfectly, Miss Granger," Snape cut her off. "I understand that you've all been hoodwinked by a man who has fooled even the Dementors. Now stand aside." Wednesday stepped forward, holding up the silver device she'd taken from Bode. "Professor Snape, Broderick Bode from the Department of Mysteries has been conducting unauthorized experiments with Dementor essence. He attempted to use this device to control them and attack us, specifically targeting Sirius Black before he could be brought to trial." Snape's attention shifted to the device, his eyes narrowing with recognition. "Where did you get that?" "From Bode himself, approximately 4 minutes ago at the forest edge," Wednesday replied precisely. "He fled via apparition when confronted. The device appears to function on principles similar to those described in the green volume you made available to me earlier." Something flickered in Snape's expression, surprise, perhaps, or a grudging respect for her quick thinking. His gaze moved to Pettigrew, who was cowering behind Lupin. "And this is Peter Pettigrew," Sirius growled. "Very much alive, as you can see. The actual betrayer of the Potters and the man who framed me 12 years ago." Snape's wand remained raised, but his certainty seemed to waver slightly. Pettigrew is dead. As you can see, Professor, that information is incorrect, Wednesday stated flatly. Empirical evidence contradicts the historical narrative. Logic dictates a re-evaluation of established conclusions. For a long moment, Snape stood frozen, clearly torn between his hatred for Sirius and his commitment to truth and justice, however reluctant that commitment might be. Finally, he lowered his wand slightly. Dumbledore's office, he decided. All of you. Now. One false move, Black, and I won't hesitate. Sirius nodded grimly, understanding the precarious truce. Together, the unusual group made their way through the castle to the headmaster's office, drawing curious and alarmed looks from the few students still awake and wandering the corridors. The gargoyle leapt aside at Snape's password, and they crowded onto the spiral staircase. Dumbledore was awaiting them in his office, as if he had somehow known they were coming. Given what Wednesday had observed of his capabilities, she wouldn't have been surprised if he did. "Ah," he said calmly, taking in the extraordinary assembly before him. "I see we have quite a situation on our hands. And Peter Pettigrew, alive and well. Most illuminating." What followed was a complex, occasionally heated explanation of the night's events. Pettigrew's survival and betrayal, Sirius's innocence, Bode's manipulation of the Dementors, and Wednesday's strange interaction with Dementor essence, all were laid out for Dumbledore's consideration. The headmaster listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions but largely allowing each person to tell their part of the story. When they had finished, he sat in thoughtful silence for several moments, stroking his long silver beard. "This presents us with both opportunity and significant challenges," he said finally. "Peter's survival proves Sirius's innocence, but convincing the Ministry will require careful handling. And Mr. Bode's unauthorized experiments are deeply concerning, particularly his apparent ability to control Dementors. The device should help prove that part of our story," Hermione pointed out, gesturing to the silver contraption Wednesday had placed on Dumbledore's desk. "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed, examining it with evident concern. "This appears to be a highly sophisticated artifact, combining several branches of magical theory in most disturbing ways. It utilizes sympathetic resonance to establish control pathways between the captured essence and free Dementors," Wednesday explained. "The temporal element suggests the possibility of programming delayed or conditional commands as well." Dumbledore looked at her with increased interest. "A most astute analysis, Miss Addams. And your interaction with the essence itself, most extraordinary. You believe your unique signature somehow transformed it?" "The evidence suggests a catalytic rather than consumption-based interaction," Wednesday confirmed. "My presence appears to alter the fundamental nature of Dementor essence rather than simply repelling or neutralizing it. A matter worthy of further study," Dumbledore mused. "Though perhaps under more controlled circumstances than Mr. Bode arranged." He rose from behind his desk, decision made. "Here is what we shall do. I will contact Madame Bones from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement directly, she is fair-minded and thorough. Severus, please secure Mr. Pettigrew in your office until the authorities arrive. The strongest containment charms, if you please." Snape nodded curtly and levitated the bound Pettigrew, who had given up protesting and now simply whimpered occasionally. "Remus, please escort Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley, Miss Lovegood, and Miss Addams back to their respective quarters. They have had quite enough excitement for one evening." "And me?" Sirius asked quietly. Dumbledore's expression softened slightly. "You, Sirius, will remain here with me. You are still technically a fugitive, and while I believe your innocence will soon be established, we must proceed carefully." As the students were ushered out, Wednesday noticed Dumbledore examining the Dementor control matrix with grave concern. Something about the device clearly troubled him deeply, perhaps recognition of its implications beyond just Bode's unauthorized experiments. Lupin escorted them through the quiet corridors, first dropping Luna off near Ravenclaw Tower, then the Gryffindor trio at their portrait hole. Finally, he walked Wednesday back to her private quarters. "A most eventful night, Miss Addams," he commented as they reached her door. "Your contributions were significant." "I acted according to logical imperatives," Wednesday replied simply. Bode's device required investigation, and Black's innocence needed to be established. Lupin studied her with that same mixture of fascination and wariness she often inspired. "You know, most students would be shaken after such an encounter. Dementor essence is among the most feared magical substances known. Fear is rarely productive," Wednesday observed. "And the essence was oddly familiar, similar to certain void-like sensations I've experienced during my family's more esoteric rituals." This statement clearly disturbed Lupin, but he masked it quickly. "Well, get some rest. I imagine Dumbledore will have more questions tomorrow once things have settled." After Lupin departed, Wednesday entered her quarters and immediately began documenting the night's events in her research journal. The interaction with Dementor essence represented a significant data point in understanding her effect on the creatures, and potentially in comprehending her own interdimensional displacement. If her soul signature could catalyze transformation in Dementor essence, perhaps it could similarly interact with other dimensional barriers or transference mechanisms. The veil in the Department of Mysteries seemed increasingly relevant to her situation. As she worked, a soft tapping at her window drew her attention. A magnificent owl perched on the sill, a small scroll attached to its leg. Wednesday opened the window, allowing the bird to hop inside. It extended its leg imperiously, clearly expecting immediate attention. The scroll bore no signature or seal. The message inside was brief and written in an elegant, precise hand: "Your dimensional displacement is no accident. The barriers are weakening. What came through with you has been noticed. The department is not united in its approach. Trust few. Watch for the sign of the inverted hourglass." A concerned observer Wednesday studied the cryptic message carefully, analyzing its implications. "What came through with you" suggested something had accompanied her during her transportation, something she wasn't aware of. And the reference to the department not being united implied factions within the unspeakables with different agendas regarding her situation. The owl waited patiently, apparently expecting a response. Wednesday considered carefully, then penned a simple reply: "Message received. Clarification requested regarding accompanying entity and identification protocols for trustworthy department members. Wednesday Addams." She attached the note to the owl's leg and watched as it soared away into the night. Another variable had been added to an already complex equation. Her displacement was no accident, suggesting deliberate action rather than experimental mishap. As Wednesday continued her notes late into the night, a faint violet glow appeared briefly at her window, the transformed Dementor essence passing overhead, still drawing the castle's Dementor guardians away from their posts, following its own mysterious purpose. Something fundamental had changed tonight, in the wizarding world's power structures, in the nature of Dementors, and perhaps in the very fabric of reality between dimensions. The barriers were weakening, the mysterious note had claimed. Wednesday wondered if that meant her way home was becoming clearer, or if something far more dangerous was emerging from the cracks between worlds. Either possibility promised to be scientifically fascinating. Chapter 3, Family Reunion. Wednesday woke to the sound of glass shattering. Her eyes snapped open, body instantly alert without the sluggish transition most people experienced. The window of her quarters had fractured in a peculiar pattern, not from impact, but from within, as if the glass itself had tried to rearrange into something else. She slid from bed, bare feet silent on the cold stone floor, and approached the window carefully. The fracture pattern resembled the Addams family crest, a hand holding a severed head. Coincidence seemed statistically unlikely. "Interesting," she murmured, tracing the pattern with one pale finger. The glass felt unusually warm, vibrating slightly beneath her touch. A knock at her door interrupted her examination. When she opened it, Hermione stood there looking worried, still in her nightclothes with a hastily thrown-on robe. "Wednesday. Did you see it?" "The sky, I was examining a peculiar fracture in my window glass," Wednesday replied. "What about the sky?" You need to see this. Right now. Wednesday followed Hermione through the quiet corridors. Dawn was just breaking, but the quality of light seemed wrong, too purple, too vibrating. They reached the astronomy tower where several other students and teachers had already gathered, all staring upward with expressions ranging from wonder to terror. The sky above Hogwarts had developed what could only be described as a crack, a jagged violet line stretching from horizon to horizon, pulsating with strange energy. As Wednesday watched, the crack widened slightly, and for a brief moment, a shadow that looked remarkably like a disembodied hand appeared to wave from within the fissure before vanishing again. "Thing," Wednesday said softly. "What?" Hermione asked, tearing her gaze from the sky. "Our butler's right hand. Disembodied. Sentient. Helpful with household chores and lockpicking." Hermione stared at her. "Your family has a sentient disembodied hand as a butler." "Assistant butler," Wednesday corrected. "Lurch is our primary butler. Thing handles more delicate tasks requiring manual dexterity without the encumbrance of a body." Professor McGonagall approached them, her normally stern face tight with concern. "Miss Addams, Professor Dumbledore requests your immediate presence in his office. He believes this phenomenon may be connected to your situation." "A logical conclusion," Wednesday agreed. "The dimensional barriers appear to be weakening. The fracture pattern in my window glass resembled my family crest. And the apparition in the sky resembled our butler's assistant." McGonagall blinked rapidly, apparently deciding not to question these statements. "Yes, well. Follow me, please." Dumbledore's office was unusually crowded when they arrived. The headmaster himself stood examining a series of whirring silver instruments that seemed to be working overtime, emitting puffs of colored smoke and occasional high-pitched whistles. Professor Snape lurked near the window, watching the crack in the sky with suspicious intensity. Professor Lupin sat in a chair looking exhausted. Wednesday noted it had been a full moon the previous night. Sirius Black, looking considerably better after a night of food and safety, stood near Harry, both watching as Wednesday entered. "Ah, Miss Addams," Dumbledore greeted her. "I believe we may be experiencing what magical theorists call a dimensional bleed. The barriers between your world and ours appear to be thinning." "Yes," Wednesday agreed simply. "My family is attempting to reach me." "Your family is causing this?" Snape asked incredulously, gesturing toward the window where the violet crack was now visibly wider. "Most likely," Wednesday confirmed. "They're quite resourceful. When I was 7 and accidentally transported myself to the Bermuda Triangle, they performed a ritual involving my great-grandmother's preserved eyeballs, 3 virgin sacrifices, and a substantial electrical current to locate me." The adults exchanged alarmed glances. "I hope the virgins weren't actual human sacrifices?" Lupin asked cautiously. "Of course not," Wednesday replied. "We used virgin wood from 3 separate species of carnivorous tree. Much more effective for dimensional rituals than people. Humans rarely remain virgins long enough to develop sufficient mystical potency." Relief visibly swept through the room, though Snape still eyed her with deep suspicion. "The question," Dumbledore said, bringing them back to the immediate issue, "is whether this dimensional thinning represents an opportunity for Miss Addams to return home, or a more significant threat to both our worlds." "I received a message last night," Wednesday said, retrieving the note from her pocket. "It suggests my arrival wasn't accidental and implies something may have come through with me." Dumbledore read the note with growing concern. "The inverted hourglass, a reference to the Department of Mysteries, certainly. And likely to Mr. Bode's faction specifically." "Bode," Sirius growled. "The one controlling the Dementors." "Yes," Dumbledore confirmed. "After last night's events, I contacted several trusted sources within the Ministry. It seems Broderick Bode has been conducting unauthorized experiments with Dementor essence for some time, seeking ways to weaponize their abilities beyond mere containment and fear induction. The department device I confiscated represents a significant advancement in such research," Wednesday noted. The ability to control Dementors remotely has obvious tactical advantages. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed grimly. And with your unique effect on Dementors, you represent both a threat to his research and a potentially valuable research subject. He wants to capture me, Wednesday stated flatly. It wasn't a question. I'm afraid that seems likely, Dumbledore confirmed. Which is why you'll remain here under our protection while we determine the exact nature of this dimensional anomaly and how best to proceed. Wednesday considered this. Protection may be unnecessary. If the barriers continue thinning at this rate, my family will likely breach them within 24 to 36 hours. Their extraction methods tend to be decisive. Nonetheless, Dumbledore insisted gently. Until that time, he was interrupted by one of his silver instruments suddenly emitting a shrill alarm. Simultaneously, a spectral lynx bounded through the wall, the same Patronus messenger they'd seen previously. Albus, it spoke in a deep, urgent voice, multiple breaches at the Ministry. The Dementors guarding Azkaban have abandoned their posts en masse. Reports of them gathering over the Forbidden Forest. Bode is missing, along with several experimental artifacts from the department. The Patronus dissolved into silvery mist, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Well, Dumbledore said after a moment, it seems events are accelerating more rapidly than anticipated. He's making his move, Lupin said grimly. Using the chaos from the dimensional anomaly as cover. For what purpose? McGonagall asked sharply. To capture Wednesday, Harry said, speaking for the first time. Everyone turned to look at him. It makes sense, doesn't it? With all the Dementors gathering and everyone distracted by that crack in the sky, it's the perfect time to grab her. An accurate assessment, Wednesday agreed. Tactically sound, if predictable. Dumbledore moved to the window, gazing out at the violet crack still dominating the sky. We must assume Hogwarts is Bode's target. The wards will slow him, but if he has indeed taken experimental artifacts from the department, he may have means to circumvent our defenses. Then we prepare, Sirius said decisively. Set a trap instead of just waiting. Precisely my thinking, Dumbledore agreed. Minerva, please alert the staff. Severus, I believe certain protective potions might be rapidly prepared. Snape nodded. Several. The girl could assist. She's shown adequate skill. From Snape, this qualified as extravagant praise. Excellent. Harry, I must ask you and your friends to remain safely in Gryffindor Tower. This is not a situation for students, with respect, Professor, Harry interrupted, we're already involved. And Wednesday's helped us, we can't just hide while she's in danger. An admirable sentiment, Dumbledore acknowledged, but my responsibility is to your safety. If I may, Wednesday interjected, Harry Potter and his friends have demonstrated considerable tactical adaptability in crisis situations. Their knowledge of the castle's hidden passages exceeds that of most staff, according to available data. In a defensive scenario against an unknown number of opponents, their assistance could prove strategically valuable. Dumbledore studied her for a long moment, blue eyes twinkling despite the gravity of the situation. You make a compelling case, Miss Addams. Very well, Harry and his friends may assist with perimeter monitoring only. At the first sign of direct danger, they will retreat to safety. Is that clear? Harry nodded, clearly pleased to be included. I'll work with Severus on the defensive potions, Wednesday offered. I have several family recipes that might prove effective against both Dementors and human adversaries. Just don't poison anyone on our side, Sirius muttered. Precision targeting is a fundamental principle of Addams' potion making, Wednesday assured him. Collateral damage represents inefficient formula design. This did not appear to completely reassure Sirius, but before he could respond, the castle shook with a distant boom. Dumbledore's instruments whirred frantically. The outer wards, he said grimly. Bode is moving faster than anticipated. To your positions, everyone. Miss Addams, stay with Professor Snape. Your safety is our priority. They scattered with surprising efficiency, years of magical crises having apparently honed Hogwarts staff into a well-oiled emergency response unit. Wednesday followed Snape down to the dungeons, where he immediately began pulling ingredients from his stores with practiced precision. Strengthening solution, modified for airborne dispersal, he explained curtly. Dementor-repelling vapors. Anti-possession safeguards. What does your family use for defensive barriers? Primarily blood-based wards utilizing generational power, Wednesday replied, already sorting ingredients. But given the time constraints, I suggest a modified version of our home protection smoke. The base is similar to your strengthening solution but incorporates psychoactive elements that induce specific fear responses in intruders. Snape raised an eyebrow, almost looking impressed. Fear-inducing potions against Dementors. Logical inversion, Wednesday explained. Dementors feed on fear they create in others. When confronted with externally generated fear directed at them, their feeding mechanisms become confused. Like forcing a vacuum cleaner to suck up its own exhaust. Intriguing theory, Snape acknowledged. The preparation. Nightshade extract, powdered bone of a feared predator, dragon should suffice in this dimension, combined with essence of despair. Your doxicide would provide an adequate dispersal medium. Snape nodded sharply. Begin with the nightshade extraction. I'll prepare the bone powder. They worked with surprising synchronicity, Wednesday's methodical precision complementing Snape's years of expertise. Within 20 minutes, they had produced several cauldrons of variously colored potions, each designed for specific defensive applications. As Wednesday bottled the final batch, a particularly nasty concoction designed to temporarily solidify Dementor essence, another boom shook the castle, closer this time. The inner wards, Snape said grimly. We're out of time. They gathered their potions and hurried upstairs, finding the entrance hall already in defensive preparation. Flitwick was enchanting suits of armor to guard key corridors. McGonagall had transfigured the stone floor into a series of tactical barriers. Sprout was positioning various dangerous plants at strategic points, including several that Wednesday recognized as particularly vicious man-eating varieties. Excellent timing, Dumbledore called from where he stood reinforcing the main doors. The outer perimeter has been breached. Harry reports Dementors approaching from the forest, at least 50 strong. And Bode? Snape asked sharply. Not yet visual, but likely among them. The Dementors are moving in a coordinated pattern suggesting external control. Wednesday handed out the bottled potions with rapid-fire instructions. Blue for Dementor repulsion, splash patterns rather than direct hits. Green induces disorientation in humans only. Red creates a temporary barrier impermeable to both physical and spectral entities. The staff accepted the potions without question, evidence of their trust in Snape's judgment if not Wednesday's. Miss Addams, Dumbledore said as he took his share, I must ask you to remain in the Great Hall with Professors Lupin and McGonagall. It's the most defensible space, and, the crack is widening, Wednesday interrupted, pointing through the windows. Everyone turned to look. The violet fissure in the sky had indeed grown substantially, now resembling less a crack and more a tear in reality itself. Weird lightning crackled within it, and strange, distorted shadows moved in its depths. My family's getting closer, Wednesday noted. Their methods tend toward the dramatic. So it seems, Dumbledore murmured. All the more reason for you to. The temperature plummeted suddenly. Frost formed on the windows with unnatural speed, spreading in crystalline patterns across the glass and stone. The enchanted suits of armor shuddered, their metal joints creaking as they contracted in the sudden cold. They're here, Lupin warned unnecessarily. Through the windows, they could see them, dozens of Dementors gliding across the grounds toward the castle, moving not in their usual chaotic patterns but in disciplined formations, like a trained military unit. And walking among them, protected by their presence, was Broderick Bode. Even at this distance, they could see he carried something, a staff or scepter that glowed with malevolent black light. He's using a focus, Wednesday observed. likely containing concentrated Dementor essence. More sophisticated than the device I confiscated. And considerably more dangerous, Dumbledore agreed gravely. He appears to have full control of them now. The Dementors reached the steps, surrounding Bode in a protective formation as he approached the main doors. His voice, magically amplified, echoed through the entrance hall. Albus. I know you can hear me. I have no quarrel with Hogwarts or its students. Send out the Addams girl, and we'll depart peacefully. Resist, and I cannot guarantee the Dementors will remain under my complete control. An obvious lie, Wednesday commented. He has no intention of departing peacefully regardless of your decision. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. Broderick was always a poor negotiator. Too eager to obtain what he wants. He stepped forward, his own voice magically projecting through the doors. Your unauthorized experiments end here, Broderick. Return the Dementors to Ministry control and surrender yourself for questioning. No harm will come to you. Bode's laugh was cold and sharp. Always the diplomat, Albus. But you don't understand what's happening. The girl is not what she seems. Her presence here is no accident. The dimensional tear is just the beginning, she's a harbinger of something far worse. Wednesday tilted her head slightly, analyzing this claim. His assertion contains partial accuracy. My arrival was apparently not accidental, according to the anonymous message. However, his characterization of me as a harbinger suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of causality. Whatever came through with you, Bode called, whatever's causing that tear in reality, it's growing stronger. The department has recorded unprecedented fluctuations in the fabric of spacetime since your arrival. Hand yourself over, and I can contain the damage before both our worlds suffer irreparable harm. He's lying, Lupin said firmly. He wants to study you, use your connection to the Dementors for his own purposes. Obviously, Wednesday agreed. Though his statements about dimensional fluctuations may have factual basis. The barriers were already weakening before my displacement. My presence may have accelerated the process. Another boom shook the castle, but this time not from an attack. The violet crack in the sky had widened dramatically, now resembling a gaping wound in reality. Strange lightning continued to flash within it, and a sound like distant, distorted calliope music drifted down, a tune Wednesday recognized immediately. The Addams family anthem, she noted. They're definitely coming through. Your choice, Albus. Bode shouted. Send her out, or I send the Dementors in. You can't protect everyone in there. Dumbledore turned to Wednesday. Miss Addams, I believe the time has come for a more proactive approach. What do you suggest? Wednesday considered for a moment. Bode's control relies on the staff he's carrying. Deprive him of it, and the Dementors should revert to their natural state, in which case, my presence will likely cause them to flee. A direct confrontation, then, Dumbledore mused. Risky, but perhaps our best option under the circumstances. I have a theory I'd like to test regarding my interaction with Dementor essence, Wednesday added. Last night, my contact with the essence Bode was using appeared to transform it. If I could replicate that effect on a larger scale. You're proposing to intentionally expose yourself to concentrated Dementor essence. McGonagall looked horrified. Absolutely not. The risk is unacceptable. Risk assessment is subjective, Wednesday replied calmly. And my family has a history of immunity to most conventional forms of harm. My grandfather once spent 6 months in a vat of acid as a relaxation technique. Before McGonagall could respond to this disturbing statement, Luna Lovegood appeared, somehow having evaded the lockdown protocols. She wore her spectrospecs and carried what looked like a homemade necklace of butterbeer corks. Hello, she said dreamily. I thought you might need these. They're excellent for confusing Raxperts, which Dementors use to navigate when they're being controlled artificially. She handed the cork necklace to Wednesday, who accepted it without hesitation. Thank you, Luna. An excellent suggestion. The Nargles told me your family is coming, Luna continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than an imminent interdimensional incursion. They're bringing something special for you. Something that hums with old magic. Wednesday nodded. Most likely Grandmama's cauldron. It's been in the family for 17 generations and has developed a degree of sentience, particularly regarding dimensional portals and venomous brews. Luna smiled serenely. I'd like to meet them. They sound fascinating. They would appreciate your perceptual uniqueness, Wednesday agreed. Another boom from outside interrupted their conversation. The Dementors were pressing against the doors now, their cold seeping through the solid oak. Bode's voice came again, more impatient. Last chance, Dumbledore. Send out the girl, or we come in for her. You have 1 minute to decide. Dumbledore looked at Wednesday. It seems we've run out of time for elaborate planning. Are you prepared to face him? I am, Wednesday confirmed. Though I suggest a two-pronged approach. While I engage Bode directly, a secondary team should attempt to disrupt his control staff from behind. The Dementors will be focused on me due to their instinctive response to my presence, potentially creating a tactical blind spot. Excellent strategy, Dumbledore agreed. Sirius, Remus, can I count on you for the flanking maneuver? Both men nodded grimly. Harry and his friends should remain inside, Wednesday added. Their emotional signatures are particularly attractive to Dementors, making them high-risk targets. Dumbledore smiled slightly. A surprisingly protective sentiment, Miss Addams. Tactical efficiency, Wednesday corrected. Casualties among allies represent mission failure. Of course, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Minerva, please escort Mr. Potter and his friends to safety, then join us for the confrontation. McGonagall nodded and hurried off to find Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who had been helping with preparations in another part of the castle. Time's up, Dumbledore. Bode shouted. We're coming in. 1 moment, if you please. Dumbledore called back, surprisingly calm. He turned to Wednesday. Are you absolutely certain about this, Miss Addams? No one would think less of you for seeking safety. Certainty is rarely absolute, Wednesday replied pragmatically. But this approach offers the highest probability of success with acceptable risk parameters. And the Addams family has never prioritized safety over scientific inquiry. As you wish, Dumbledore said with a slight bow. Then let us proceed. He waved his wand, and the great doors swung open. The assembled defenders stood ready, potions and wands at hand. Wednesday stepped forward to stand beside Dumbledore, facing Bode and his Dementor army directly. Bode stood at the bottom of the steps, surrounded by hovering Dementors. In his hand, he held what appeared to be a staff carved from black wood, topped with a swirling mass of darkness that could only be concentrated Dementor essence. His face showed surprise at their direct approach, quickly masked by confidence. A wise decision, he called. Send the girl down, and we'll be on our way. I'm afraid I must decline your generous offer, Dumbledore replied pleasantly. Miss Addams will be remaining at Hogwarts under our protection until such time as she can return safely to her own dimension. Bode's expression hardened. Always making things difficult, Albus. The girl is not what you think. She's dangerous, a threat to the very fabric of our reality. I'm merely a teenage girl with unusual family traditions and a scientific interest in interdimensional travel, Wednesday said flatly. Your attempt to frame me as an existential threat suggests psychological projection or deliberate manipulation for personal gain. Bode stared at her, momentarily thrown by her clinical assessment. He recovered quickly. You don't understand what you've done by coming here. The tear in the sky is just the beginning. If it continues to widen, it will facilitate my family's arrival, Wednesday interrupted. Which appears to be imminent based on atmospheric disturbances and the increasing volume of our family anthem. Indeed, the strange calliope music from the sky tier had grown louder, now clearly recognizable as the distinctive Addams family theme, complete with finger snaps that seemed to shake the very air. Your family, Bode repeated, a new calculation visible in his eyes. More like you. More with your unique effect on Dementors. The Addams family has traditionally disrupted supernatural entities, Wednesday confirmed. Great-Aunt Demogorgon once caused a Banshee convention to cancel their annual screaming competition simply by bringing her homemade cookies. Bode raised his staff, the swirling darkness at its tip pulsating ominously. All the more reason to contain this threat before it expands. Dementors, seize the girl. Bring her to me unharmed. The Dementors surged forward, dozens of them streaming up the steps toward the castle entrance. But something strange happened as they approached Wednesday. They slowed, their formations becoming erratic. Several at the front actually stopped completely, hovering in apparent confusion. What are you waiting for? Bode shouted, raising his staff higher. The darkness at its tip flared. I command you to take her. The Dementors pressed forward again, clearly compelled by Bode's control, but their movements remained jerky and uncertain. As they reached the threshold where Wednesday stood, the lead Dementors began to emit that same high-pitched keening noise she had heard during previous encounters, the sound of Dementor fear. They're fighting your control, Wednesday observed calmly. Their instinctive response to my presence conflicts with your commands, creating cognitive dissonance in whatever passes for a Dementor's mind. Impossible, Bode snarled, advancing up the steps himself, staff extended. My control is absolute. As he approached, Wednesday noticed Sirius and Lupin slipping out a side entrance, making their way around to position themselves behind Bode. Dumbledore must have seen them too, for he engaged Bode in further conversation, clearly stalling. Your research exceeds your understanding, Broderick, the headmaster said gravely. Dementors are ancient entities, not tools to be manipulated for personal gain. Their nature is more complex than the department has ever acknowledged. What would you know about it? Bode sneered. Hiding in your castle, playing schoolmaster while others push the boundaries of magical knowledge. The department has studied Dementors for centuries. Yet you failed to understand their most basic nature, Wednesday interjected. They feed on positive emotion and induce negative memories, suggesting a symbiotic relationship with human consciousness rather than simple predation. Their fear of me indicates recognition of something fundamentally incompatible with their existence, a soul signature that disrupts their feeding patterns. Bode stared at her with renewed interest. You've deduced more in days than some unspeakables have in years. All the more reason you belong in the department, under proper study and guidance. I prefer self-directed research, Wednesday replied. Your methodologies appear unnecessarily constrained by bureaucratic limitations and ethical hesitations. A startled laugh escaped Bode. Ethical hesitations? You think that's what limits us? Only partially, Wednesday acknowledged. Primarily, you lack the generational knowledge my family has accumulated regarding supernatural entities and dimensional boundaries. Your approach is fundamentally flawed because you fail to recognize consciousness as a dimensional constant rather than a localized phenomenon. This pseudoscientific babble was deliberately calculated to intrigue and distract Bode, who as an unspeakable would be naturally drawn to theoretical magical discussions. It worked. He took another step forward, eyes gleaming with intellectual interest despite the standoff. Consciousness as a dimensional constant. Explain. Behind him, Sirius and Lupin had almost reached position. Wednesday needed to keep him talking just a little longer. The Addams family has mapped consciousness across 17 known dimensions, she improvised smoothly. Our research suggests that entities like Dementors exist as cross-dimensional echoes, feeding on specific emotional wavelengths that resonate across multiple realities. My unique signature disrupts this feeding pattern because I naturally exist at a different frequency, a consequence of my interdimensional origin. This was complete nonsense, but delivered with Wednesday's usual deadpan confidence, it sounded convincingly scientific. Bode was fully engaged now, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his tactical objectives. Fascinating theory, he said, taking another step closer. And the tear in the sky, you believe it's a natural consequence of your frequency disruption? More likely the result of my family's efforts to locate me, Wednesday corrected. They're using a sympathetic resonance technique developed by my grandmother, amplified by dimensional constants unique to our bloodline. As she spoke, the tear in the sky widened dramatically, the strange calliope music reaching a crescendo. Lightning flashed within the violet void, and distinct shapes began to form in its depths, humanoid figures moving closer to the boundary between dimensions. Bode glanced up, momentarily distracted by the spectacular display. It was the opening Sirius and Lupin needed. They launched their attack simultaneously, Sirius in dog form leaping for Bode's legs while Lupin fired a precise disarming charm at his hand. Bode sensed the attack at the last second and whirled, swinging his staff in a defensive arc. A wave of cold black energy erupted from the Dementor essence at its tip, knocking both Sirius and Lupin backward. But the momentary disruption in his attention caused his control over the Dementors to waver. The creatures began moving erratically, some retreating from Wednesday while others pressed forward, creating a chaotic swirl of tattered black robes. Enough of this. Bode snarled, raising his staff high. I need only one Dementor to subdue you. He pointed the staff directly at the largest Dementor hovering nearby. The creature convulsed as the darkness from the staff seemed to flow into it, enlarging and transforming it. The Dementor grew to twice its normal size, its tattered robes billowing outward as if inflated by some internal pressure. Its rattling breath became a thunderous roar that shook the very stones of the castle. Behold, Bode called triumphantly, the true potential of Dementor essence when properly harnessed. This enhanced specimen can overcome even your unusual resistance. The supersized Dementor surged forward with frightening speed, directly toward Wednesday. The cold it radiated was so intense that frost formed instantly on every surface it passed. Even Dumbledore took an involuntary step back, raising his wand to cast what would likely be a Patronus. Wednesday stood her ground. As the monstrous Dementor loomed over her, she reached into her pocket and withdrew a small vial of the potion she and Snape had prepared, the one designed to temporarily solidify Dementor essence. With precise timing, she threw it directly at the creature's hooded face. The vial shattered, releasing a cloud of silvery vapor that enveloped the Dementor's head. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The creature froze in midair, its billowing robes suddenly stiffening as the essence that composed its form began to crystallize. It emitted a sound unlike anything they'd heard before, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate the air itself. What have you done? Bode demanded, staring in shock as his enhanced Dementor began to transform before their eyes. Its black form was turning silvery white, hardening into something that resembled obsidian glass more than the smoke-like substance it had been. Phase transition, Wednesday explained calmly. The potion catalyzes a state change in Dementor essence, converting it from quasi-gaseous to crystalline solid. A temporary effect, but sufficient for current tactical needs. The partially solidified Dementor hung in the air, still moving but now with the jerky, restricted motion of a marionette with tangled strings. The other Dementors backed away from it, clearly disturbed by the transformation of their enhanced brethren. Bode raised his staff again, face contorted with rage. You think a momentary disruption will stop me? I still control the others. But before he could issue another command, a tremendous crack split the air. The tear in the sky expanded explosively, edges rippling as something large began to push through from the other side. The calliope music reached deafening volume, accompanied now by the distinctive sound of double finger snaps echoing like thunderclaps. They're here, Wednesday noted, the faintest hint of satisfaction in her voice. With a sound like reality itself tearing along a perforated line, the dimensional barrier ruptured completely. Through the massive violet portal floated what could only be described as a Victorian mansion, or at least a portion of one. A single turret with several adjoining rooms drifted down from the tear, somehow maintaining its structural integrity despite being completely detached from any foundation. Leaning out from windows and balconies were figures that could only be the Addams family. A tall, mustached man in a pinstriped suit wielded what appeared to be a ceremonial sword, slashing at the edges of the dimensional tear to widen it further. Beside him stood a woman of extraordinary beauty and pallor, her floor-length black hair and dress rippling in interdimensional winds. A round boy with a malevolent grin was firing what looked like a small cannon from one window, while a massive, towering figure that could only be described as Frankenstein-esque operated some kind of crank mechanism on the roof. Mother. Father. Pugsley. Lurch. Wednesday identified each in her usual monotone, though those who knew her well might have detected a hint of warmth beneath the flatness. Wednesday, darling, called the woman, Morticia, her voice somehow carrying perfectly despite the chaos. Stand back, sweetheart. Your father's bringing the good explosives. Yes, Tish, the mustached man, Gomez, shouted with manic glee. The Hungarian dynamite. Perfect for interdimensional rescue operations. Cool, Pugsley grinned, already lighting what appeared to be a bundle of alarmingly large dynamite sticks. The Hogwarts defenders stared in shock at this spectacle. Even Dumbledore seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The Dementors scattered in confusion, their formation completely broken by the unexpected arrival. Bode recovered first. What in Merlin's name? He never finished the sentence. Thing, the disembodied hand Wednesday had glimpsed earlier, launched itself from the floating turret with surprising velocity, landing directly on Bode's face. The unspeakable staggered backward, dropping his staff as he clawed at the five-fingered assailant now apparently attempting to tickle his nose from the inside. Excellent trajectory, Thing, Wednesday called. Remember his nerve clusters are arranged differently in this dimension. Thing gave what could only be described as a thumbs up, though it was difficult to tell given that the hand was entirely thumbs and fingers, without a palm for reference. The dropped staff rolled down the steps, the swirling darkness at its tip pulsating angrily. Wednesday moved toward it, but Bode, despite his ongoing struggle with Thing, managed to gesture frantically. The enhanced, partially solidified Dementor lurched forward, positioning itself between Wednesday and the staff. Family assistance required, Wednesday called matter-of-factly. Supernatural entity, partially solidified, blocking tactical objective. Did you hear that, Gomez? Morticia called delightedly. Our little Wednesday needs help with a supernatural entity. They grow up so fast. Right away, cara mia. Gomez leapt from the floating turret with swashbuckling enthusiasm, landing on the castle steps in a perfect fencing stance. He assessed the crystallized Dementor with professional interest. Magnificent specimen. Reminds me of your great-uncle Crucifix during his crystal meth phase. Focus, darling, Morticia reminded him, gliding down to join him with supernatural grace. Neutralize first, admire later. Together, the Addams parents approached the enhanced Dementor, showing absolutely no fear or hesitation. If anything, they seemed delighted by the encounter. The Dementor, despite its partially solidified state, attempted to retreat, clearly sensing something in the newcomers that disturbed it even more than Wednesday's presence had. Oh no, don't be shy, Morticia cooed, reaching out with pale, elegant fingers. We simply adore meeting new manifestations of supernatural dread. Reminds me of our honeymoon. Gomez declared enthusiastically. Remember the Tibetan death cults, Tish? How they ran screaming when you offered them your special hemlock tea. You always say the sweetest things, mon cher, Morticia purred. The Dementor emitted a high-pitched keening noise that cracked its partially solidified form. Fissures appeared across its crystallized surface, spreading rapidly as the creature apparently experienced the Dementor equivalent of a panic attack. Wednesday seized the opportunity to dart past it, retrieving Bode's staff from where it had fallen. The swirling darkness at its tip seemed to reach for her, tendrils of Dementor essence stretching toward her fingers as she grasped the black wood. Instead of retreating, Wednesday deliberately touched the essence, allowing it to make contact with her skin. As before, the dark substance seemed to absorb into her momentarily before erupting outward, transformed from black to a pulsating violet similar to the dimensional tear. Fascinating, she murmured. Consistent with previous observations. My soul signature appears to catalyze a fundamental transformation in Dementor essence. The transformed essence swirled above the staff, growing in size and brightness. The remaining Dementors, now completely free of Bode's control, retreated en masse, fleeing from the violet light as if it caused them physical pain. Bode, having finally dislodged Thing from his face with a well-placed stinging hex, stared in horror at the transformed staff. "What have you done? Do you have any idea how dangerous?" He was interrupted by a tremendous explosion as Pugsley's dynamite detonated. Not, as might have been expected, with destructive effect to the castle or grounds, but rather expanding the dimensional tear to its breaking point. The violet portal rippled and then stabilized, edges smoothing into a perfect oval that hung in the sky above Hogwarts like a second moon. "Portal stabilized, Mom," Pugsley called proudly. The salamander bile was the perfect catalyst. "Well done, Pugsley," Morticia approved. "Your explosive skills are improving wonderfully. Such a shame your sister missed your demolition of the town hall last week." The crystallized Dementor finally shattered completely, fragments dissolving into mist that was quickly drawn to the transformed essence swirling above the staff Wednesday held. As the last of it was absorbed, the violet light pulsed brighter, and Wednesday felt a strange resonance, as if the staff were somehow tuning itself to her specific frequency. The dimensional coordinates, she realized. The transformed essence is aligning with my home dimension's unique signature. Precisely, Wednesday. Gomez appeared at her side, mustache quivering with paternal pride. "Your grandfather Addams theorized that interdimensional travel could be facilitated through essence transmutation. Though he was referring to transmuting his liver after particularly enthusiastic absinthe experimentation." Bode had recovered enough to pull out his wand, pointing it shakily at the Addamses. "You're all under arrest by authority of the Department of Mysteries. This interdimensional incursion violates 17 different statutes of—" "Oh, how delightful," Morticia interrupted smoothly. "A bureaucrat with delusions of relevance. Reminds me of that charming tax collector who tried to audit us last year. His nervous breakdown was so entertaining." Wednesday, Dumbledore called from the castle entrance, where he and the other defenders had been watching this extraordinary family reunion with varying degrees of astonishment. "I believe the portal your family has created offers you a way home. But what about the enhanced Dementor essence? If it remains in our world, it won't," Wednesday assured him, raising the staff. The violet essence swirling above it had grown more concentrated, now resembling a miniature version of the portal in the sky. "The transformed essence is attuned to my dimensional frequency now. It will follow me when I depart." "And good riddance," Sirius added, having transformed back to human form. He was watching the retreating Dementors with deep satisfaction. "Though I'm almost sorry to see them go. Your family's effect on them is entertaining." "The Addams effect," Gomez declared proudly. "We've been terrifying the supernatural since 1407. Or possibly 1408, record-keeping was spotty during the Black Death. Mostly because our record-keeper was Patient Zero." Luna had somehow appeared beside Wednesday, watching the proceedings with serene fascination. "Your family has the most remarkable aura I've ever seen," she observed dreamily. "Like a thunderstorm made of spiders and old books." "Thank you," Morticia said, genuinely pleased. "What a perceptive child. Wednesday, you didn't tell us you'd made such interesting friends." "Luna Lovegood," Wednesday introduced. "She perceives reality through non-standard filters that often reveal underlying truths others miss. Her insights regarding my soul signature proved crucial to understanding the Dementor effect." Charmed, Morticia extended a pale hand, which Luna shook without hesitation. "Any friend of Wednesday's is welcome at our home. We host a lovely séance every third Thursday." "That sounds wonderful," Luna smiled. "I've always wanted to talk to a properly socialized ghost. The ones here are rather set in their ways." While this exchange took place, Bode made one final, desperate attempt to salvage his plans. He lunged for Wednesday, trying to wrest the staff from her grasp. "The essence is department property. You can't take it to another dimension. Pugsley, seeing the attack, fired what appeared to be a small crossbow bolt that pinned Bode's sleeve to the ground with remarkable precision. Hands off my sister, weird dimension guy. Nice shot, Pugsley. Gomez beamed. The trajectory lessons are paying off. Bode struggled to free himself while Dumbledore and Snape approached, wands trained on the unspeakable. Broderick Bode, Dumbledore said gravely, you are relieved of your position pending a full investigation by the Wisengamot into unauthorized experimentation with Dementor essence, attempted kidnapping, and misuse of department resources. You don't understand, Bode protested, still trying to yank his sleeve free. The dimensional barriers will stabilize once I return to my proper dimensional frequency, Wednesday finished for him. The tear was a response to displacement of a native entity, me. Once I'm back where I belong, the natural order will reassert itself. Exactly right, Wednesday. Gomez said proudly. Your mother's been very precise with the calculations. Use the abacus made from your great-grandmother's vertebrae, never fails. Are you certain you must leave so soon? Dumbledore asked Wednesday. There's much we could learn from each other. Wednesday considered this. My displacement was apparently not accidental, according to the anonymous message I received. Remaining here could potentially cause further damage to both dimensions. Additionally, I have several ongoing experiments at home requiring my attention. Pugsley's tendency to tamper with my cultures in my absence creates unnecessary variables. Last time she left her spores unattended, I grew a third arm, Pugsley explained cheerfully, displaying his currently normal two-armed state. It was awesome until it started strangling me in my sleep. A standard reaction to Pugsley, Wednesday noted. Even artificially grown limbs find him naturally aggravating. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had managed to slip past McGonagall's watchful eye and now approached the bizarre gathering on the castle steps. Harry stepped forward, clearly wanting to say goodbye. So you're really going, he asked Wednesday. Back to your dimension. It's the logical course of action, she confirmed. Though the research opportunities here have been enlightening. I'll document my observations thoroughly for future reference. We'll miss your unique perspective, Hermione said, looking like she surprised herself by actually meaning it. And thank you for helping clear Sirius's name. Justice is efficient, Wednesday replied with a slight nod. Prolonged imprisonment of innocent individuals represents systemic failure and wasted resources. That's one way to look at it, Ron said, still eyeing the Addams family with a mixture of fascination and horror. A word of advice regarding your rat problem, Wednesday added. Enhanced containment protocols would be prudent. Pettigrew's animagus abilities make standard incarceration potentially inadequate. Already addressed, Sirius assured her, coming to stand beside Harry. Dumbledore suggested a specially enchanted cage that prevents transformation. And with my name cleared, I'll be keeping a close eye on the situation. He ruffled Harry's hair affectionately, clearly relishing his newfound freedom. Lurch, the massive butler, had descended from the floating turret and now approached, carrying what appeared to be Wednesday's dimensional displacer, the device that had started this entire adventure. He held it out to her with a rumbling groan that somehow conveyed both affection and respect. Thank you, Lurch, Wednesday said, taking the device. I'll need to recalibrate the quantum accelerator to account for the dimensional drift we've experienced. We brought all your favorite tools, dear, Morticia assured her. Your collection of preserved specimens is safe at home, though I must say Kitty Cat has been quite depressed without you. She's hardly disemboweled any mice since you left. Poor darling, Wednesday said, the faintest hint of emotion coloring her usually flat tone. I've brought her a gift from this dimension. A remembrall containing the final breath of a particularly frightened first-year student. Captured it during potions class. Several Hogwarts staff members exchanged alarmed glances at this statement, but the Addams parents beamed with pride. Always so thoughtful, Morticia approved. Now, shall we return home? Your grandmother's preparing a welcome-back feast. Roasted chimera, I believe, with those spiders you like. One moment, Wednesday said. She turned to Luna. I'd like to establish a permanent connection between our dimensions. For research purposes. Oh yes, please, Luna agreed enthusiastically. I have so many questions about the comparative nesting habits of nargles across dimensional planes. Wednesday handed Luna a small black notebook. My observations on this dimension's unique magical creatures, with comparative analysis to our native species. The back pages contain instructions for creating a small-scale dimensional viewer. The ingredients are relatively accessible, though you may need to substitute unicorn hair for Wendigo whiskers. Luna accepted the notebook with reverent hands. This is wonderful. I'll write to you about my findings. Should I address the letters to Wednesday Addams, another dimension, or is there a more specific address? 0001, Cemetery Lane, Wednesday provided. The dimensional coordinates are encoded in the notebook's binding. If you burn it under a full moon while reciting the Addams family motto, it should establish a stable communication link. What's the family motto? Harry asked curiously. We gladly feast on those who would subdue us, Gomez and Morticia recited in unison, with Pugsley enthusiastically joining in for the final words. How nice, Hermione managed weakly. With preparations complete, the Addams family gathered at the base of their floating turret. The dimensional portal pulsed overhead, responding to the staff Wednesday still held, its transformed essence now aligned perfectly with their home frequency. Miss Addams, Dumbledore said, stepping forward for a final farewell, your brief time at Hogwarts has been most educational for all of us. I wish you safe travels and hope you'll remember us fondly. Emotional attachment to temporary environments is inefficient, Wednesday replied. Then, after a slight pause, she added, but this dimensional variant contains several noteworthy individuals whose cognitive patterns merit remembrance. Coming from Wednesday, this was practically a tearful declaration of eternal friendship. We must have you all over for dinner sometime. Gomez declared expansively, shaking Dumbledore's hand with excessive vigor. Interdimensional guests are always welcome at the Addams mansion. We'll make a party of it, drinking, dancing, ritual sacrifice. The usual festivities. How kind, McGonagall managed, looking slightly faint. The final farewells complete, the Addams family boarded their floating turret. Wednesday, standing at the rail beside her parents, raised the staff one final time. The violet essence swirled upward, connecting with the dimensional portal in a spectacular display of eldritch energy. The resonance is stabilizing, she observed. Portal integrity at 97% and rising. Dimensional alignment confirmed. Excellent calculations, Wednesday. Gomez beamed. Your mother's so proud of your interdimensional mathematics. Takes after my side of the family. Great-grandfather Alphonse accidentally calculated himself into the fourth dimension while doing his taxes. Never did get that refund. As the turret began to rise toward the portal, the Dementor essence transformed by Wednesday's touch began to follow, streaming upward in ribbons of violet light. All across the Hogwarts grounds, the remaining Dementors fled in earnest, their natural instinct to avoid the transformed essence finally overriding any lingering effects of Bode's control. The portal pulsed with increasing energy as the Addams family approached. Just before they entered it, Wednesday turned for one final look at Hogwarts and its assembled defenders. For the briefest moment, something that might almost have been a smile touched her lips. Farewell, she said simply. Your dimension has been entertainingly macabre. With that, the floating turret passed through the dimensional portal, disappearing in a flash of violet light. The staff and transformed essence followed, drawn to Wednesday's unique frequency. As the last of it vanished, the portal began to contract, the tear in reality slowly mending itself now that the dimensional displacement had been corrected. Within minutes, the sky above Hogwarts was once again a normal twilight blue, with no sign of the extraordinary events that had transpired. The only evidence of the Addams family's visit was the strange pattern of frost on the castle steps, curiously resembling a hand making a snapping gesture, and the profound absence of Dementors anywhere on the grounds. "Well," Dumbledore said after a long moment of silence, "I believe that concludes what has surely been one of the most unusual weeks in Hogwarts history." "Thank Merlin," Snape muttered, though those who knew him well might have detected a hint of something almost like regret in his voice. The Addams girl had shown remarkable aptitude for potions, after all. As the assembled wizards and witches began to disperse, Luna remained gazing up at the now normal sky, her spectrospecs perched on her nose and Wednesday's notebook clutched to her chest. "Goodbye for now, Wednesday Addams," she said softly to the empty air. "Until the next full moon." Far away, in another dimension entirely, Wednesday Addams stepped off the floating turret onto the familiar, comfortingly gloomy grounds of the Addams mansion. The family graveyard stretched before her, tombstones tilting at precarious angles, the ever-present fog swirling around her feet like an affectionate pet. "Home," she noted with her usual flat effect, though perhaps with the slightest hint of satisfaction. Dimensional coordinates confirmed. "Welcome back, Wednesday." Uncle Fester emerged from behind a mausoleum, his bald head gleaming in the moonlight. "Did you bring me anything from the other dimension? Something deadly? Something explosive?" "Several recipes for potions with interesting properties," Wednesday confirmed. "And extensive notes on a species of soul-feeding entities called Dementors. With proper adaptation, they might make excellent additions to our greenhouse security system." "Wonderful." Uncle Fester cackled with delight. "Lurch has been complaining about the mailman escaping too often." As the entire Addams clan gathered to welcome her home with their unique blend of macabre affection, Wednesday glanced down at the staff she still carried. The transformed Dementor essence continued to swirl above it, now smaller but somehow more concentrated, pulsing with violet light in perfect harmony with her own natural frequency. A rare, small smile touched her lips. Interdimensional displacement had proven surprisingly educational. And now she had an entirely new field of research to explore, the potential applications of transformed Dementor essence in her ongoing experiments. After all, every Wednesday needed a hobby. And hers had always involved the scientific exploration of things that terrified normal people. It was good to be an Addams. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.